Greetings, friends. It is Monday, the 30th of December, or so my digital computer clock tells me. Very happy to be joining you today from sub-Saharan Africa. I've just traveled for the last 2 weeks through. I arrived back yesterday, actually, in South Africa through Zimbabwe. First time in 40 years plus since I fled as a child, and Barotse land in western province of Zambia, throughout Botswana, and a great deal of South Africa in the last 2 weeks. We're seeding the New Earth Africa project here, which I will be, I think, able to make public pronouncements on around about spring equinox, when we intend to be in Tennessee announcing the Tennessee New Earth Project. So we have Bacala Laguna. Dr. Alex Ling, who's joining us today on the symposium, is there at our base camp at Bacala Laguna in Mexico. Tennessee is lighting up this year. Very excited to make that announcement shortly. I'll be making that announcement actually at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. I'm not sure which dates I'm speaking, but I believe it's the 7th, 8th, 9th, roundabout there. Christy will put the links up. I was expecting to see David Sereda there at the Conscious Life Expo, but he's just informed me in the green room that he's unable to make it. I'm not quite sure. Maybe a meerkat stole his passport, but either way, I'm feeling suicidal because I was very much looking forward to seeing him there. So I'm going to deal with that grief whilst I soldier on with the introduction of today's Lazarus Symposium, bringing to you, friends, the very best in Lazarus lineup today with Jane Evershed, David Sereda, Elana Freeland, your most beloved David Emery, and Dr. Alex Ling. So just by way of treading water whilst the numbers keep jumping up here, and thank you, the numbers are definitely leaping up. Today we are looking into year-end revelations 2024 and future frontiers 2025 and beyond. The forces shaping our world, our universe, the fabric of so-called reality, everything and everyone is undergoing, one way or to other, the apocalypse, the falling away of the mask of ages. Every single human being that I know, and those of you who follow my work know I am a perennial inquisitor and traveler. All I do is travel. All I do is wheeze and talk and inquire and probably irritate the hell out of most people. But I am having that quantum conversation incessantly. I've been doing it for a quarter of a century, and I'm only now really getting into gear. But my point is that as I do travel the world, and I've now been in well over 30 countries in the last year, as I travel the world, oftentimes it's just for a day or two or three, whatever, but I'm having conversations, I'm meeting people, I'm talking. I'm also blessed to be meeting a lot of leadership. I've just yesterday had lunch with the incoming president of one of the most richest countries on earth. I'm not allowed to name it, but it was a fascinating meeting, a dinner meeting. The day before, I met the king of the Amandebele for lunch here. The week before that, I was in Zambia meeting with the king there. I'm having these meetings, not just grassroots with fascinating people on the ground, but I'm meeting them with leadership, with hereditary leadership, with political leadership, with captains of industry, and so on and so forth, and the occasional celebrated figure thrown into the MAC. I also have this tremendous access to geniuses, the very best pioneering minds and hearts in the world, some of whom are on the panel tonight. As you delightful Lazarus community know, we've been doing this for 4 years now. This is the 42nd, going into the fourth year. It's the 42nd symposium. I think it was over 300 hours of broadcasting, again, with some of the greatest minds on earth, the pioneers, true pioneers of the frontiers of consciousness and of reality. And the point I'm trying to get to with my preamble is that every single human being that I'm meeting with and speaking to, no matter what their standing is appears to be undergoing a seismic, if not cataclysmic, shift in their own lives, in their own domain. And it seems like none of us are spared. I know I can speak for myself, and I will in full disclosure. I like nothing better than to stand naked, metaphorically speaking, with my little peepee hanging out. That's how I want to present myself to the world. I want to be naked. I want to be, um, stripped bare, because I believe that reintegrating and recatalyzing that source code of the new human, the superluminal human, the Christed human, and to be sure, in invoking the new earth into the manifest realm, and overriding the temporal realm, the old tick-tock 1260 time, lords of time, Cronus, Zeus realm. We are required to be barren and neutral and completely selfless, and in a sense, how else can we pierce the veil? How else can we become truly enlightened or actualized in a fucking shit show of a circus of reality, this chaotic realm that each of us were born into, and as we were the umbilical cord severed with some godless stainless steel isotopes coming off a pair of scissors in the hands of some mundane doctor or midwife or surgeon before we got smacked on the ass and yowled ourselves into the reality frame. Fuck me, that's no way to engender our divinity. And yet each of us are subject to that trauma. Each of us is subject to that psycho-civilizational PTSD, the complete lost tribe of the forgotten ones cast adrift in this quantum void, in this abyss. And here we are, awakening on the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil, and having to learn that soft shoe shuffle, that dance between the fiction of good and the fiction of evil, the fiction of republicanism and the democratic bullshit, and the fiction of reality that is otherwise construed for us through this false light matrix. Now, you and I, us, and the blessed beings on this panel that I'm bringing on in a minute, are able to convene the real conversation, the only one that ever mattered, which is, how do you and I now begin to convene relationship with self in this shit show of reality, so-called reality, and how do we then lean that greater relationship that we define with self, which can only ever be based on pure truth and right action in our own lives? How do we lean that then into the new fellowship, and thereby activate that proverbial morphogenetic shift? How do we then enter the new dreaming and become the arbiters, the progenitors of the outcome of reality, of this new dreaming, this new world, this new earth that each of us, certainly the Lazarus community, are absolutely committed to, mind, body, and soul? That's what this conversation today is about. And we're going to look at things like, the enigma of drone overhead in the United States, clearly a construence, to the mysterious shifts in animal migration, from synthetic biological experimentation to the swirling energy of the solar maximum, a desperately important subject. We're looking to uncover all of these layers of the world in such flux. And is it all chaos? Or are we brushing up against new dimensions of order with insights into phenomena like the Schumann Resonance and whispers of shifting timelines? This discussion, friends, this panel with these polymathic experts is the discussion that promises to pierce through the veil of the unexplained and invite you to think bigger. With that said, let me bring on first Elana Freeland, because she's been gone from us for far too long. Elana, so happy to see you.
Well, I'm surprised. I didn't expect myself. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sacha. A lovely introduction, by the way.
Thank you. Well, so happy to have you here. Secondly, age before beauty. You see, they're all waiting to see who I choose for that. Age before beauty, right? Okay. I don't know who's the oldest, but I know the most sagacious amongst you is, this is hard. No, fuck it. It's ladies first. Jane, you're in. How you doing, girl?
Thank you. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Sacha.
Happy to see you. David Sereda, happy to see you too.
Great to be here.
So we've become that reductive. We just do a salute and that's it, huh?
No, peace. When I meditate this morning, there was so much bliss. There's something about when I make the peace sign in the bliss state that addresses the cosmos with the real peace. We've lost peace, and this is very powerful because it's when the Jews.
You and Ringo Starr, David, hold off on the rhetoric until I brought in Dr. Alex Ling from Mexico. Happy to see you, Alex.
Hi, nice to see you as well. So good to be here. And yeah, what a panel. It's going to be some show.
Indeed, indeed. And finally, friends, least but not last, but not least, but not last, but not least is my beloved, blessed friend, Dave Emery, our resident archaeocosmologist. Dave, I don't know if you ever classified yourself as an archaeocosmologist, but friend, that's what you've become, courtesy of the Lazarus Symposium. And you are world-renowned as thus. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm delighted to be introduced last because that means that I am, without doubt, the youngest. I'm so thrilled by that. Thank you. And also let me say what a perfectly passionate presentation you just presented there. I thought it was wonderful. Thank you for that.
Well, it's very kind of you. I was simply treading water to try and get the numbers up, but we've got the numbers. We're up there now, so we can unleash ourselves on our constituency. So, friends, David Sereda, pioneer in frequency and harmonics. You all know and love him. David has got a brief presentation. Christy, producer, has given him 10 minutes. I've said 15, but let's settle at 12.5. David, you've got the floor on the subject of drones, because I'd like to open this panel up with that, given that this is such an extraordinary eventuation that's afflicting now the gestalt, certainly of North America, is deeply affected and infected now because of this drone story. So you've got the floor for 12.5 minutes. Dave, please riff ahead.
Okay, so first of all, let me just show you, because I'm going to give you an abstract first, because I became a contactee just before this started. In fact, right when it started. And so looking at all the data, you have 4 layers to this phenomenon. You have real ETs that have come in, and underneath that layer, you have reverse engineered military grade UFOs doing surveillance. And underneath that layer, you have military drones that are non-classified. And underneath that layer, you have civilian drones. And I'm a drone pilot. I have a license. You can't fly above 400 feet. In fact, your drone becomes disabled automatically when you try to break boundaries. You can't fly anywhere near an airport. Your drone will be disabled automatically. So by using the word drone, they have basically tried to disarm with the truth of what's really going on here. And we have reports from airline pilots off the west coast of Oregon and California describing these UAPs. The pilots use the word UFO, that are coming into our airspace. And so we are doing surveillance on them while they are doing surveillance on us. And we actually know where they're from. And I'm going to show you this. So this experience actually happened to me. I'm going to share screen here, entire screen, and share. And I'm going to show you what happened to me on the 19th of October first. So on the 19th of October, I mean, this is really an incredible experience. Can you see this Adderser track days? I just want to make sure you're seeing that.
Yes.
Okay, so I hear the voice of Jesus Christ. I know his voice, as crazy as that sound, on the 19th of October, and he told me to make these calculations when I get up. Starting from October 19th, plus 432 days. Everybody here should know what 432 is. It's a perfect middle A note on a classical music scale, but it's way more than that. 432 is an enormous subject. So when I click calculate, I arrive at Christmas in 2025. Now, Jesus then said to subtract 432 days from October 19th, and I arrive within 1 day of the celebration of the ascension of the Mother of Christ. And then I'm going to do 225 days, which is plus 225 days, which is the orbit of Venus. And I'm going to come to June 1st, 2025. Notice it's 2025. And Christmas was 2025. Now, that is the ascension day of Jesus. And in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, it says that he will return the same way that he, let me just do stop share, that he went up. Okay, so this experience really happened to me. And when I did the math, there were more calculations he gave me, and I kept arriving at June 1st. So let me show you now the Pentagon's UFO report by the Pentagon group, which is called Arrow. And this whole report is coded, actually coded. Let me just find the Arrow page here really quick. Arrow UFO report. I just want people to know where this comes from.
That's fine. We'll watch a falling astronaut until you found that.
You will see. You will see. Yeah, you will see that this entire screen share. Okay, so here is the Pentagon's all domain anomaly resolution office called Arrow. And this guy, who's the director of the Pentagon Arrow report, is a cryptologist, which means he encrypts. He understands encryption. So watch what happens when we look at his report. It's all coded and encrypted with the message that they understand that is actually upon us right now. So present, share screen. Here we go here. It's I'm going to show you the Pentagon report coded. This is what it looks like. Okay. And every number.
Just magnify that. David, people won't see that on a telephone. You need to magnify that.
Okay. So I got to go first. I got to go back to it. This is really important because this report is in. Yeah, I can magnify it. There we go. Right there. Okay. So present this report. Yeah, this report will reveal everything that is actually happening right now. Can you see it big now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this report, the numbers in cases are all alive. It's the actual numbers. So you look at the window of the reports is May 1st to June 1st, and guess what? On the lunar calendar, the Ascension Day of Christ will always fall basically between the beginning of May and the 1st or 2nd of June, always. So it means they're looking in the window for this return event that is due to come, and it will come in this window. The second number, 757, reports total is the radius of the cubic city of God, the new Jerusalem, in Revelation chapter 21. Okay, which is a approximately 1,500 mile cubic city, which is an enormous mothership. Now, if you go here, underneath you have analytic adjudication. Cases closed 49. Is the number of orbits that Sirius A makes around the B star. And over here on the left, under domain, you'll see the number 49 again.
I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing any change in that slide.
I know the slide isn't changing. I've got the numbers highlighted in red. What you see highlighted in red is my analysis. What you see in black and white is theirs.
Right.
And you're seeing the slide. So note also that the United States has it had 49 states and then 50 states, which is the orbital cycle of Sirius B around Sirius A, right? Pending closure 243 is a day of Venus. Venus goes around from sunrise to sunset to sunrise in 243 Earth days. So what you can see in this entire report, written by a cryptologist himself, is what they have data collected and understanding and what's going on with UFOs. 21 is chapter 21 in Revelation. You notice they have undergoing analysis 21 cases is code for the cubic city of God, which appears in Revelation 21. Active archive 444 is a middle A note, because in classical pitch, 440, 432, and 444 hertz are the middle A. And in fact, in Jimmy Blanchett's radios, we look at all three of these frequencies for ET messaging at these frequencies. So this entire report is written in actual code. So what happens next is that, and I'm going to show you this on the screen.
So the connection to drones, visitations.
Yeah, you're going to see this. You're going to see it perfectly. You're going to see it. And the next part I'm going to show you is perfectly timed. Everything that happened is actually perfectly timed. And you're going to see this in a second here in my timeline of events. So August 30th, 2024, the NASA Boeing Starliner spacecraft receives a strange audio sound overtakes their stereo equipment, which when I analyzed it in a spectrum analyzer is 432 hertz. That was on August 30th. September 21st, I wake up in the middle of the night hearing this tone of 216 hertz, which is one octave down from 432, and I'm teleported into the dashboard inside of a spacecraft control panel, which again, I'm going to go through this really quickly. This is actually an amazing experience. October 18th, the NASA Solar Dynamic Observatory gets bumped hard by something in space. I have the actual video of that. I don't have the time to show it because I'm trying to get through this. Now look at the date. October 19th is the date I hear Jesus's voice. A satellite Intelsat 33 explodes into multiple pieces for no apparent reason. And on October 19th, the same date I heard the voice of Jesus, NASA suddenly loses all contact with the Voyager 1 15 billion miles away. This is reported on every news channel in America. So why did these three things happen on the same date? Because from that date, with these calculations, you arrive at these three most sacred dates that I mentioned. Now, November 16th, going forward to the next month, Jimmy Blanchett and I transmit the NASA Starliner mystery sounds towards Mini Moon 2024 PT5 on the 16th of November. On the 18th of November, 2 days later, the drones start in New Jersey. On November 19th, a loud sound overtakes my TV set, which drove my daughter crazy. I used a frequency meter and measured the frequency at 55.35 hertz. November, this is the beginning of the drones. See, the drones, when they came in, remember, there's three layers. There's the ET craft, there's our reverse engineered, then there's military drones, and there's civilian drones. So when these craft came in, they signaled my whole house. Why? Because I do transmissions here. Now, on the 25th of November, Mini Moon 2024 PT5 leaves Earth's orbit, and literally 1 day later, NASA loses all contact with the Solar Dynamics Observatory satellite, which is still not back online. We've lost it ever since. It sent its last image to Earth on the 26th of November. Remember, that's 1 day after this supposed mini moon left the solar system. So now drones by the 26th of November are everywhere, and they're not just in New Jersey. They're in California, they're in Oregon, they're in England, they're in Europe, and they're actually reporting them in Russia. And these supposed drones are everywhere, and pilots, airline pilots, are reporting them as real UFOs flying way above their altitude where they're cruising at in the 20,000 foot range. Some of them are at 25,000 feet. Some of the civilian airlines are at 30,000 feet. And they're reporting these, they actually use the word UFOs. So on the 26th of November, the same day, another individual whom I know hears a strong audio tone overtake their TV set. And he identifies it at 432 hertz, which is the same number that Jesus gave me to do the calculations. Now, the ratio between my frequency in my house and his is the same ratio of our sun's radius to that of Sirius A. So without, I mean, this actually would take a long time to get people to really understand properly. But these communications, in fact, maybe Krista, you could show the video now of the flashing lights, which is being reported in Newsweek magazine.
The lights do not always flash. I go to Walmart all the time, and they never flash like this.
The supposed drones, in fact, there's reports of this everywhere, of these street lights even just flashing, right? And this is apparently reported in over 18 states, according to Newsweek magazine. And it's a very common phenomenon due to the magnetic fields of these actual UFO craft. But what they're doing is the flashing rate, and this same flashing occurred in my house, which is a second event that happened here, has a pulse rate with a message in it. So the messaging that in decoding of the messaging speaks to a huge event coming in the dates that I've forementioned. So what they're doing now is these beings from the star Sirius, which are legendary. Dave Emery can speak all about the Syrians and the connection to the Great Pyramid of Egypt and the goddess Isis and Osiris, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are visiting us right now, doing an assessment of all of our assets, all of our military assets, a complete assessment to get ready for what is going to happen in this next cycle. And that is, in a nutshell, what I think is really going on.
David, the next cycle being what? What cycle are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about an event that has been prophesied for over 2,000 years, a massive return event. And so that's why our military is coming up with this story of how they're looking for an atomic bomb. Now, you cannot detect gamma rays coming off an atomic warhead from a distance of 400 feet in the air. It's impossible because the gamma rays that come off of the plutonium core are blocked by shielding metals. Like tungsten is the best metal. It'll block almost all radiation. And you won't be able to get a signature at that distance. In fact, you need to be within 2 or 3 inches of an atomic bomb to detect its location. You can't do it from the sky. So this whole story about the military looking for a nuclear weapon is a total cover story for what they know is really happening, because our airline pilots are actually reporting that there are real UFOs. And the thing about this particular case is it's constant. It's been going on since the 18th of November.
Yeah,
it's still going on. I predict they will leave. They will gather their assessment data, and then the return date is the date in the calculation that I keep getting. That's also in the Arrow report, which is in the window of what we know in the lunar calendar every year. The Ascension Day of Christ will appear between the beginning of May and June 1st or 2nd.
very good.
And so that's what I think is going on.
Beautifully succinct. Thank you. So that the big event you're inferring or referring to is the second coming, so to speak. Right?
Well, it's something probably, I mean, bigger than that. Like if one man comes out of the sky who was an ascended master and lands on the ground in Jerusalem and starts talking to some people, I think most people today would think that's an AI or Project Bluebeam. They wouldn't even really accept it. So whatever's about to happen, and I think that what they're calling the drone story is the biggest story in the world right now, being covered by multiple news networks. Some news networks are covering it up. Other news networks like News Nation and Ross Coulthart are going really deep into the story and are not buying the drone story. Like, you know, the drone.
Very good. Very good. Beautiful. Thank you, David. So I want to quickly open this up to the panel. Elana, any comment or question that comes to your mind here? And Dr. Ling, I think Dr. Ling, I think you might have something to say, but please, anyone on the panel.
Yeah, for me, it's
I have really big problems here with the signal. I couldn't even see anything which was presented for some reason. I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Alex, we can hear you okay, but that you might want to get onto the Starlink downstairs there. I don't know which network you're on there at the base in Mexico, but check which one you're on. Elana, let's just defer to you for the moment.
Yeah, it's way beyond my pay grade, and as you know, or I know at least you know, Sacha, I concentrate on the human element here on planet Earth and what's going on with the geoengineering of the planet in our own atmosphere, including the upper atmosphere. I don't really deal with space. I found it interesting, the idea of ascension, and I'll have to think about that. The second coming, and then of course when I hear about the planet Sirius, I'm sort of programmed or conditioned to think of the Freemasons. So what I'm sitting here wondering is how much of this is a Freemason psyop.
Right, indeed. But
And
you know, your expertise, Elana, or a part of your expertise is a very dedicated focus on synthetic biology and geoengineering. And so, to that extent, I was wondering if you'd considered that these drones are the onset of some kind of orchestrated interventionism, even biologically, and that maybe that augurs. Do you have any reflections on these drones yourself?
my reflection on the drones is that they are finally, it's like a nuncio. They're announcing the drones. And there are very sophisticated drones that many people will think are coming from off planet. I personally don't believe that. And I just, as I said, Sacha, I concentrate on the elements that we have here on Earth.
Thank you. Sorry about that echo there. Thank you, Elana. We got that just in time, but we got Alex on two devices, and I think that caused an echo. I wanted Dr. Alex Ling particularly to speak to this because he's not a Freemason, but his father was the Grand Master of the biggest Freemasonic lodge in Germany, who was murdered when he turned against the Freemasons because they were involved in trading illicit arcane alien technologies between lodges, and were about to activate something connected to the Superhadron Collider with one of these underground artifacts that had surfaced through the Masonic auctions. And once his father kiboshed that engagement, it led to his murder. But so I wanted to know if Alex had any reflections there. Alex, I don't know if you can hear us. You've gone very frosty, so you might need to just put a tissue across your camera, or either that, or you've turned into a ghost. But did you hear the piece? You need to unmute your microphone. Did you hear what Elana mentioned, that she intuited that this might be something, the drones might be something connected to Masonic interference?
Particularly, I want to add the date November 18. That is used over and over and over for Freemason psyops. Sorry to intrude.
Thank you.
Yes, I think I haven't seen the footage, I'm afraid, because I was on the wrong channel here. So I just kind of got back, and sorry about the blurred vision there. My camera actually cracked the other day. So, but what I do now is they have these secret surveillance programs in place since the Second World War. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is for sure connected to the Freemasons or other organizations which are very deeply connected to that.
Very good. Thank you. Dave, any comment or feedback?
Well, first of all, pay tribute to all three of your commentators there, especially David. What a great set of research there. And of course, I actually agree with what Alex and Elena say as well. It sounds as though I'm hedging my bets here because I don't know hardly anything about drones. What I can say is that with regard to Sirius B and Sirius A, Elana is perfectly correct about Freemasons' connection to that. That's Sirius A in particular. Sirius B has a much more benign viewpoint regarding Earth. And with regard to what might be happening, and I'm not an expert, but what I do suspect very strongly is that we are in effect returning to an original timeline. And I think I may be talking about that later. But there is an original timeline with 12 probabilities encased within it. But as a result of all the distortions that have taken place universally, there are many, many timelines. Now, the relevance of what David's been saying, Elana's been saying, and Dr. Alex has been saying is that there is definitely right now, and you attested to that in your preface, Sacha, there is right now a shift in the energetic frequencies of timelines. And what we are seeing now is the staggeringly trenchant, trying to remain as the original paradigm that we have had for many thousands of years, that is trying to retain itself in the presence of another timeline, which is the one we are on now, which is the expansion of consciousness timeline, which is separating. So what I believe is happening is that you are getting the separation energies occurring at the same time as the retrenchment energies are occurring. This causes astonishing chaos. So really what we're talking about is the expansion of our consciousness, which creates an alternative reality field, whilst the old reality field remains as it is, and that could be involving Freemasons, Illuminati, what Dr. Alex was talking about, and the technological expansion of control frequency. So that's my very small and insubstantial connection to what we've said.
Well, I think that resonates very deeply, and I think will with most people. And thank you for that. Jane, drones over North America, principally, not exclusively, but principally, Project Bluebeam or something more mundane. What are your thoughts?
Well, exactly when David said Bluebeam, it made me think about, this drone hysteria almost seems to me intuitively like some kind of warning for humanity or to humanity, because we know that they planned for decades now. Their final fear frontier was or is Project Bluebeam, in order to gather everyone under one control umbrella. But then at the same time, we also know that we've had these ridiculous things happening in politics that almost seem like a joke or a movie because they're so bad. So, and then another way I'm feeling like this drone phenomenon is somehow removing an element of panic. They always try to stop this mass panic. They never want the mass panic to kick in. And so I feel like people are almost becoming kind of numb to UAPs and identifiable objects in the skies. And then beyond the drones, we've got other strange phenomena too, coming in, like these orbs, which are benevolent, supposedly. So I think people are just getting used to the idea of connecting with this celestial interference. And so we won't be so jarred by it when it happens.
Yeah.
If they do throw Project Bluebeam in there.
Very good, thank you. Okay, that disruption of animal migration patterns. This is an interesting piece. So Dr. Ling is going to discourse on this subject. Recent anomalies in animal migration are raising profound questions around the world. Could changes in Earth's magnetic field, so-called climate shifts, or even cosmic signals explain this behaviorism? And what might these disruptions teach us about planetary balance and interconnectedness? Alex, I hope you can hear us okay, but you've got the floor.
Yes, I can hear you okay. So, yes, I've been studying actually animal migrations, especially in the time when I was in Turkey. As you know, Göbekli Tepe has quite a lot of carvings of all sorts of different animals, which were arguably carved in just before actually the Great Flood. And some event which then happened, which was connected to the solar maximum, an event which we also have at this point right now, has actually caused a great disturbance in animal migration. And we have also the same kind of problems here now for the last few years, where we have animals being disorientated and not being able to find their original pathways, and that is partially due by the changes in the magnetic field, and that is where the especially the bird migration is heavily depending on these Earth's magnetic fields, so they're like pathways for them to find their migration pattern. So we have had a lot of other influences, of course, as well, which is like from our beloved devices like our phones, the 5G, the 4G. I mean, all these kind of influences have also impacted on the disturbance of migration. But for now, I also came across a new information which just came in the other day, which has actually to do with the quasars. And you know that I'm kind of researching the quasars for quite some time as being the original source of water in our galaxy. And there seemed to be a signal which is coming from the quasars and affecting actually our whole galaxy for quite some time. And it has been just recorded a few weeks ago. And these kind of signals can also interfere with our Earth core, changing our magnetic field quite substantially. So that, together with the solar maximum, which we are in right now, can have a profound change, or can lead to a profound change in migration patterns. Plus, for example, if you just take the humpback whale in our oceans, and you have all these 100,000 container cargo ships on our oceans at all times. So it takes only one ship, for example, to disorientate the humpback whale for at least an hour to 6 hours. So very often these whales are beaching because they cannot hear their own whale songs anymore. So that's being buffered by the frequencies of the ships, so much so that they actually changed the frequencies to a higher frequency so they can still communicate, which never happened before. So there are a lot of things which are happening right now. But I think the most important change at this point is the solar cycle 25, where we are at its peak right now. And so this has not only a profound effect on animals, but on us as well. So whenever there is a spike in solar activity, which we had over the last 2 days, quite substantial eruptions, not the strongest, but very frequent. So we are approaching the solar maximum. We had the change already of the polarity of the sun already has happened, but we didn't have had any of the big flares which we were expecting really from that point on a few weeks ago. So what it does is it kind of stores all the energy, and the sunspots which are now Earth directed could cause some problems, not just like in GPS interference, but other things as well. So the Carrington effect, which or the event which happened in 1859, and in this time there wasn't much technology around, was literally melting down all the telegraph poles. All the cables were kind of melted by this event. If it would happen today, then it would have quite catastrophic results, because we are so dependent on all the technology. So let's hope that's not going to happen. But the possibility is quite high, because we had already on the 10th of May these beautiful auroras, which people loved around the world, and they were really pretty to look at, but they are on both hemispheres. So that means that we have quite a strong solar event, which may happen over the next few months, weeks. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it will happen.
Fantastic. Very, very interesting indeed. Anyone on the panel want to raise any particular question or comment in light of what Alex has just spoken to?
Well, I would.
Thank
Alex, it is amazing to me that the geoengineering piece of what is going on is so absent from any of our considerations for even solar events. I've the fourth book that I've written on geoengineering is coming out next month or in February, and I have to say that it is obvious to me, and I can prove it, that the solar cycles have to do with the Kardashev model of a solar age that we are pursuing through geoengineering. Geoengineering is the primary handmaiden for making events happen in our now totally ionized atmosphere that appear to be cosmic. And I'm in continual doubt. I absolutely admit it. Unless I do the maths and I do the science and go back and look at things, is it natural, or is it being created by the extraordinary technology that we now have, whereby oh gosh, every earthquake that happens or a weather event, I completely feel that the geoengineers are to blame, because their philosophy is the Kardashev philosophy, which means we must have total control over our, that means full spectrum dominance, that's a military doctrine, over our planet, over our sun, and over our planetary system and galaxy. At least we need to bring that geoengineering and what they're really up to, which is not climate change and is not ameliorating global warming. No, it's not about that at all. This is a military weapon system. It is capable of creating events that seem entirely natural and God-given. But we really need to know about this, and it needs to be part of the conversation.
So, Elana, of course, you know, you're speaking also about aerosols, chemtrails, and these other emerging technologies which are influencing human and animal biology, possibly paving the way for, not possibly, indubitably paving the way for transhuman modifications. The question then emerges, how do we counteract this trend, if at all? I mean, we have such an extraordinary pantheon of dark lords and evil actors who apparently have their crooked fingers on the proverbial button for the devastation of this world. I don't see it that way, never did. I see this morphogenetic upshift as being immensely more powerful. That is this emerging from the common thrum and pulse of the emerging angelic, human, the fellowship, this Christed element that's emerging. And I believe that will just simply bleach out all of those arcane and archonic influences. But what are your thoughts, Elena, in respect of how do we counteract this apparently draconian trend of complete, as you say, full spectrum dominance? And that is a military term. 20 years ago, was the president of the Global Security Institute who came to visit me, the number one guy in the world, Jonathan Glenn Granoff, on the whole nuclear story, was staying with me at my home, and first put that stuff in front of me and said, in the work you're doing in this world, Sacha, that's the word you need to pay attention to, the term full spectrum dominance, because that's where this is all going. And you're absolutely right to raise that specter. What do you think it is that can possibly counteract it in our age?
Well, you've brought up consciousness, and I'm with you on that. Now, we could all argue about what consciousness is and how far the human can go in that consciousness. As you know, Sacha, I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner for 45 years. So I have looked a lot at consciousness and its relationship to physics, for example, physics, metaphysics, they're very close. So when we, like with the animals that Alex was talking about, it is true. There is too much frequency all over the place in this ionized wireless planet now, and the animals are losing their way. Meanwhile, magnetism is very much studied all the way back to Montauk and forward. I mean, it's a huge topic that I'm totally interested in, the control over the electromagnetic grid on the Earth and the use of magnetism to control our brains and control our behavior. So, what can be done has to begin, and this is my place, very humble as it is. We have to begin with knowledge of this technology, and it's highly classified. And how was I able to write 4 books? Well, I'm a consummate researcher. I put thousands of hours into this in order to understand. It's all over the internet. It's like Osiris's body in the Nile Delta that Isis had to hunt for. That's exactly how I feel. I am an Isis looking. And what I have found has taken me all the way, as you mentioned, to synthetic biology, which is what I'll concentrate on today. But I wanted Alex to know that that's part of the story of the geoengineering piece, is not only part of the story of animal magnetism, but that that maximum solar event. Oh, please, that is exactly what they're very good at. And the thought that they could control the sun is like, what is this, a fairy tale? But I'm sorry to say, I don't think it is a fairy tale. And yet I hope, just as you do, Sacha, that our consciousness raising will be able to poof this illusion as soon as possible. But until then, I'm on duty.
Indeed, beautifully said. Well, in investigating that and collective consciousness being the key thing here, actually it might help to define consciousness by identifying a singular absence of consciousness, which curiously enough, happenstance brings forth one of our commentators here, the Hood Streamer. Let's give him a little of his fame that he apparently desires. Is that a Orsini family necklace? Well, I'm trying to be more immersive on this broadcast. So my response to you odious little turd of a man, moments before you get block banned and deleted from the Lazarus Symposium, do me the honor, would you, Christy? No, this is not an Orsini family necklace. It's a Mayan symbol, and it perfectly frames my incredible, handsome, good looks. But point being, Orsini, the connection to that is I have a friend called Ciro Orsini. He's one of about 80,000 people carrying the name Orsini, but because he was my promoter when I was in rock and roll, and I've made no secret about that over the years, apparently courtesy of odious turds like the Hood streamer here, somebody hides behind an avatar photograph and trolls the Lazarus. They think that he's the Black Pope and that I am therefore a Crown agent, a Vatican agent, and allied with the Black Pope. So the Hood streamer, whoever you are, thank you for being here perfectly as a counterpoint geometry to what we're attempting to do on Lazarus Symposium, because that kind of energetic is what we're actually trying to evolve beyond, transmute and transcend as we transition from 2024 into 2025. So thank you for the perfect example of a turgid human being. Let's move on. Dave, did you have any thoughts? Because I saw you, I think, nod a couple of times on what we've just been discussing here.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I loved everything that everyone said. Dr. Alex and Elana. Oh my goodness, yes. Well, I didn't think really that I could contribute very much here, but as a result of what they both said, there's so much that I could say, and I realize I don't have much time. But first of all, the climate change, global warming is a geopolitical, sociological scam, and that's designed exclusively to keep us assuming that everything is natural. It's all a happy natural accident, what is happening to the world and to our universe. And that is not the case. So, Elana, I salute you, my dear, for your wonderful thousands of hours of research, because I totally agree. And I love the anecdote of LAZARUS. Oh, my goodness, it was so appropriate. Thank you. The thing is that, in fact, our sun has been messed around with so unbelievably, certainly since the Zetas started to take an interest in it. That was back in 1916. So what were they taking an interest in? They wanted to control the frequency fields of Earth. Why would they want to control the frequency fields of Earth? Because the frequency fields of Earth running through the ley lines and the axiotonal lines actually affect the animal population and the angelic human population, all of the life fields. And all of the life fields are connected to the morphological field, morphogenetic field of Earth. So we are bound as one. We are unified. And we're unified through our collective consciousness. Now, if you can mess with the collective consciousness and the frequency fields, you can do the Kardashev aspect, which is take control of the energetic resources, not just of Earth, but of our local universe. So we're really stepping now into a vast ocean of information, which has been denied us, and is courtesy of people like Dr. Alex and you, Elana, and David, who are now beginning to present to us alternative information, which is critical in these times, so that we know. I don't know the details that Elana knows, but I know the shift. I know the direction of travel. And when you know the direction of travel, you can make a choice. And I believe that we are making choices now which are opposite to all of those that are being presented on a technological scale. And I think it is great that when people like Elana and David and you, Sacha, and Dr. Alex and Jane, you all come together to explain the real facts of life. That's when we can make a difference.
Beautiful. Juanita Bonita Conchita Fajitas, aka Jane Evershed, your comments.
My first statement is that I honestly don't believe that the sun is 93 million miles away. And if I did think, well, I also think that it's possible that the sun is not a ball of flames. It just might be a plasma stargate.
Oh, we all know it's a hollow. Dan Winter established that years ago. We know it's a hollow cosmic interdimensional eyeball. That's all it is. But do go on.
Okay. So I think it's more likely all this interference and magnetic gymnastics going on is to stop, because the stargate also, the stargate that is the sun, is upgrading our DNA. And that's the last thing that they want, is for us to be empowered and with higher frequencies and in touch with all of our other senses that we're not even in touch with yet. So I think that's what's going on.
Very good. Beautiful. Dave Sereda, last comments on this piece here. It's been a bit enigmatic, and we've gone into different directions, but yeah, you get the gist.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're in solar maximum right now. Christy, if you can play the video of what happened to the sun on the 18th of October, which is a very short video. It's right there. Just watch what the sun does. This was the 18th of October. So the NASA Solar Dynamic Observatory got bumped, and it did a full 360 on the 18th of October. The next day, the 19th, is when the satellite blew up and we lost contact with the Voyager 1, and I heard the voice. Now, the next thing is that on the 26th of November, in the middle of the drone swarm, we lost the SDO. The NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory remains to this day offline. So whatever happened, they're not letting us look at the sun. And in respect to what Jane just said, the definition of God in the Christian Bible in John 1 is the solar logos, is the logos. So there is a hyperdimensional sun behind the physical sun that has its own solar system of hyperdimensional planets, which I presented here before. So right now we have proof from NASA's SDO that something's going on in the sun. They don't want us to see it. So when you go to spaceweather.com right now, we're looking at amateur pictures of the sun only. The SDO, Solar Dynamic Observatory, was super high-res imagery of the sun, and it has remained offline since the 26th of November. So we're past 1 month. I've never seen this happen right in this window where we are right now. So I suspect either a beyond Earth technology knocked out the SDO, or somebody doesn't want us to see with perfect clarity what's going on in the sun. And as I showed in the video, something hit the SDO satellite and caused it to, throughout the period of a day, to do this 360. And the next day, the satellite blows up, which nobody can explain to this day, this communication satellite. And then we lose contact with Voyager 1 for about a day or so. So there was an anomaly in space, is what I'm saying, that was the precedent event to what started down on the Earth. So there is some, as I suggested, there are these multiple layers. And what Alex talking about is in looking at the sun. In fact, this was in my dream last night, Alex, that the sun is programming the waters of the Earth right now, which again is programming our bodies for this upgrade. When your body and nervous system you raise its frequency to a higher dimension, and you start experiencing the true higher frequency bliss state of consciousness, you live in a higher order, a higher harmony of the order. You can already see it. The other stuff going on down here with the control mechanisms and the dark forces, they don't want the majority of the Earth people to go to this fifth dimensional hyper state, and they want to keep everything down. So if something good and beneficial and benefiting our ascension were to try to intervene here, they're going to create a mirage and try and block it.
Yeah. And I think it's not so much that they don't want us to ascend too. It's that they need this temporal earth plane and dimensional state in order to propagate and continue with their own reality hologram. So it's almost as though, preventing us from ascending is just a byproduct of them trying to retain traction in the temporal realm. But in any event, we're clearly caught up in this extraordinary thrall. Dr. Alex Ling, the sun programming the waters of the world. You're the man to speak to that. But whilst you're on the subject, describe for us what is coming down the pike in terms of solar activity with astrological alignments and cosmic phenomena intersecting in this time frame. Could these forces combine to reshape technological reliability? We touched a little bit on it, global timelines and our collective spiritual trajectory. So it's the collective spiritual trajectory bit I'd like you to speak to, and tether that to what David just suggested, that the sun is programming the waters of our world.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that first of all, can I just very quickly comment towards Elaine? So that was very interesting, and I totally agree that there is a lot of manipulation. I already have worked on all sorts of different manipulations coming from Solomon's timeline and all the kind of manipulations which have to do with the water and us not having access to the living waters anymore, which was something which has been done many thousands of years ago. So I am very much aware that there's a huge manipulation, and also weather manipulation is of course a big part of it. So, but I am aware that the solar activity or the sun can enhance our frequencies quite substantially here on this planet, and also can raise, of course, our frequencies, and that's what it's all about, really. So we know just there's something which we haven't even published yet. We are researching the stromatolites in the cenotes here in Mexico, and accidentally, every time when we go for another dive, we had another solar event. If it is man-made, if it is natural, what happens is that the stromatolites sending out little signals and in terms of frequencies, and we could measure these frequencies in the water. So if we can measure it in the cenotes, then also within our own bodies, of course, because we are vessels of water, this has also an effect. And that's why many people are susceptible to the changes which are coming from the sun in terms of the solar events. And I'm personally one of these people who seem to have a fine antenna for these events, where I can feel when there are changes happening and we are being hit by a CMA or something, CME, which is a coronal mass injection. So, and these kind of events are also noticed in the animal kingdom, which are also reacting to these kind of changes. So, but absolutely for sure, there is actually a connection between the quasars sending out these signals through this enormous amounts of water plasma being released at any moment, at all times into our universe, and carrying these kind of frequencies down to the sun, into our galaxy. I mean, this is just not, we are not disconnected by it, we are connected. And these blueprints, and that's why we are researching the blueprints of these planets, which are connected to the quasars, and there are definitely links between the two. We have seen it over and over again, where the blueprints are actually having a very similar handwriting. And the more we're going into the detail, the more information is the water giving us too. Before, for example, there was a big solar event, and then just afterwards we had this earthquake in California, and previously to that we had a volcanic eruption. So I'm not discussing at this point if it was man-made or not, but what we have seen in the water and in the blueprints of the water is that there was information of a volcanic eruption 2 days before and an earthquake 2 days before. So we are onto something here where we are just opening up a completely new research which has to do with the stromatolites, with the quasars, and with the cenotes, and there is definitely a connection between the information of all of those bodies. So, and the frequencies are a big point of it. So we are just trying to establish this language and finding the translation between the signals, the frequencies, and our knowledge. And I think this is something which we have lost for a long time. We are working together with indigenous people as well, who are talking about these connections to the cosmic oceans, which are the quasars, which are connecting also to the sun, and the frequencies which are imprinting the water. So we are really trying to unravel the whole kind of mystery from the conspiracies and the things which are surrounding us to really establish what is natural, what is man-made, where are we as humans, and how can we reconnect to the true source.
Beautiful. And Alex, on this subject, what are the particular timelines or date lines that you think we should be focused on in 2025? Are there any obvious solar events or activities in 2025 that you're aware of that we ought to be mindful of?
Well, again, there are some events which are imminent, so which are between now or December especially and March, April. So this is where the energy has to go somewhere, and it will definitely leave the sun and will hopefully not directly impact on Earth. But if they are, again, man-made or natural, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, because I do truly believe that the universe has a plan for us as humans as well. And so we are being upgraded over the last year or 2 years even to an incredible amount. So we are much more sensitive. We are much more in tune with with our galaxy and with our own Earth. So, and the water is definitely the big translator here in the whole game. So 24 was really all about water and the essence and the creation of the universe. So this blueprint, which is in every single person, in every single thing which is surrounding us and which needs water for its existence, that's where we need to reconnect to nature and to us. To us as humans. So there has been so much division over the last few years, and we are now on the right track where we finally finding that the simplest way really of finding and gaining knowledge again is through water, and that as simple as it is. So we just have to reconnect and understand how important that connection is to humanity.
Eureka! And now finally, all us hippies understand what the age of Aquarius and the water bearer actually denoted all along, whilst we were growing afros and going crazy. Timelines in transition. And let me just say to the panel here, anyone wants to jump in at any time, please do so. Just start speaking and I'll switch you in. Or put your hand up and Christy will bring you in if I'm not looking. But I wanted to move into timelines in transition and give the floor to Dave, Emery, principally, and then to all of you. There's growing speculation around shifting timelines. Dave did allude to this a little earlier, but I just want to dig a bit deeper here. Is this a metaphorical concept tied to collective psychology, or is there evidence suggesting a literal change in the fabric of reality? I am one of those reductive cynics who doesn't even like the idea or the notion or the word, the term timeline. I find it actually deeply offensive because to me, time itself is the ultimate of fiction. So when we speak in terms of timelines, we're splitting the infinitive into a myriad, a kind of labyrinthine order of chaos, which I don't think we need. I think we need singularity, a return to absolute coherence, which is to transmute and transcend even the godless idea of time altogether. To my mind, that's the whole point of being birthed into this chaos, is to arrive at that renewed source code and completely overthrow time, transmute, transcend 1260 TikTok bullshit, and move into the immanent alpha omega. Having said that, the question remains, Dave, because it's on my production notes and I daren't step away from them or Christy will give me flack. Is this a metaphorical concept, timelines, tied to collective psychology? Or is there evidence suggesting a literal change in the fabric of reality?
Well, thank you for that introduction. And I'm now tearing up all my notes as I speak and throwing all the books away. I'm not going to use the word timeline anymore. Now, I'm not a scientist. I've never pretended to be one. However, let's talk about reality. Now, your reality, Sacha, is broadly similar to mine in certain particular streams of consciousness. It differs in many aspects, just as it does with everybody here on the panel and everybody watching. But we all exist within a collective reality field. So this reality field is a stream of consciousness. It's a collective stream of consciousness, and you also have your own individual stream of consciousness. And this particular reality field, all of them in fact, construct themselves around this stream of consciousness, which is often learned through experience. So if we can actually monitor and manifest an alternative frequency of experience, or frequency of consciousness, as I sometimes say, with the collective, what you then develop is a reality field, stream of consciousness for the whole collective. And that would include the earth and all the elemental life fields. Because the frequency of a reality stream of consciousness, a reality field, actually affects everything that manifests within it. Now, in fact, have we got reality fields all around us? Yes. You broadly live in a geosocial, geopolitical reality field, which is strengthened and monitored very closely by the mass media, for example, or any media. And that actually corrals it into a specific stream of a reality field that is required. Now, if that sounds very, very complicated, let me just say that in the original timeline, the original reality field is, as Dr. Alex Ling was saying, a benevolent one. It has been running for billions and billions of years, and it has 12 probability reality fields within it, stitched into it through the law of free will. So through free will, you can create alternative reality fields within your own consciousness, as long as they maintain according to the law of free will, and also the law of unity, oneness together in free will. That depends upon absolute love. So what Dr. Alex Ling was saying was essentially true. We have a benign reality field running. However, over many, many billions of years, and we know this is true, we have experienced distortions. Why have we experienced distortions? Because certain beings of quite high frequency of consciousness have decided that they would like to create an alternative reality field. And this is where the word timeline comes in, simply because it was a title given. So let's use the reality fields. There are a number of different reality fields, with one in particular having the strength of purpose to continue as a stream of consciousness for the whole planetary system. And what we're seeing now is a shift in that reality field. We are creating our own reality differently. And you, all of you in the panel here, know you are, because you're questioning so many things. You're beginning to put evidence together that the reality that you have been living in is not what exactly you require. And that applies to the consciousness field too. So we are all shifting our reality fields. Now, can you have a reality field which is artificially inseminated into the one that you are living within? The answer is yes, you can. If the frequency of impact is strong enough, you can actually interfere and interface with the reality fields that the consciousness of the planetary system are running as a collective, all right? So have I got any evidence? Well, I can't go around and say, but this is an example. I took a picture of this, because there are no pictures. However, in 1973, 74, and 75, I was busy tapping my feet to the rock stars like the Eagles and Led Zeppelin, etc. And I was having a pretty good life. I was enjoying myself. And if I cast myself back into that reality consciousness field, I can remember that I was having a good time. 73, 74, 75, and so on, all the way through to 1992 and a little bit thereafter. But I can tell you that, in fact, that was a reality field insert for all of us. Every single one of us was living through and existing within an inserted reality field. So why was an inserted reality field placed there? And that is because of what we have been talking about here with Elana and Dr. Alex and David and Jane here. We've been talking about the distortions that took place on the Earth, the tectonic difficulties, the weather problems, the HAARP, the sun frequency anomalies, all of these things were happening. And in fact, in 1973 through to 1978, NASA and all the Earth scientists believed that the sun was going to explode and the Earth was going to be demolished. We were not going to survive it. And that was, in fact, one of the reality outpicturings that was being created for us. So how do we get a reality field insert from 1973 to 1992 so that the tectonic weather weapons, etc., that were being used on Earth to shift its frequency base would not have an effect upon us, the life field? And that was a Galactic Alliance interference reality field imposition upon us, so that we would live within a reality field which was apart and away from the experiences of what was really happening on Earth. And when Elana mentions the fact that certain elements in our world can control volcanoes and earthquakes, she is absolutely right. And this has been done time out of mind on Earth. And reality field inserts have had to be used quite often to keep the actual consciousness life field in existence so that it would operate in its holographic illusion of world and survive. Now, this is stepping into areas which are so far beyond the norm that it is very difficult for people to understand. But I'm telling you that, okay, let's not talk about timelines. Let's talk about reality fields. Let's talk about streams of consciousness forming reality, and all of these realities being collected and interlooping and now being finally separated, so that the original benign reality field that Dr. Alex Ling talks about through the water energies and the powers can now be reasserted into our own holographic worlds of illusion, so that we can exist and experience as we all were always meant to, without the distortions.
Beautiful. Well, you never stop amazing me, and I never stop learning from you, not least the fact that you were tapping your feet to Led Zeppelin. And there I had you in the 70s, begged for a Boney M or a Donny Osmond. But no, you were there with the best of them. You're marginally older than I am, but God love you for that. I'm going to move on momentarily to the harp pulse and human consciousness, invite Elana Freeland to lead that piece. But I just want to get feedback on this latest discourse, initially with you, Jane, followed by you, David Sereda, and then I'll posit the question to Elana on harp. So yeah, your reflections, Jane, thus far.
My reflection is that I love that Dave changed the word timeline to reality field. That's beautiful. I'm going to use that now. And I think, us as the angelic humans do absolutely have the power to change these so-called timelines. And my favorite and best example of all time is when those farmers in Europe went out with all their machines and took tons and tons of cow dung and threw it all over the government buildings. That changed the timeline into a positive one, into a good reality field, like we know what you're doing, we know what you're up to, get the hell out of here.
Beautiful, nicely put. David Sereda, reflections.
When we look at predictions and timelines, like Edgar Cayce, I think predicted a second coming event would occur in the year 2000. Alice Bailey and Jean Dixon predicted 2025. And really, it's not really fixed. It actually has to do with us. The more of us in quantity of human beings that raise our frequency and vibration by various methods that we all have access to at this point, when enough of us are ready, and these events have actually occurred. It's documented in the Hopi and the Pueblo Indians that they left their shoes and their clothes and their homes, and they all vanished. There's no skeletal remains of burials. They physically ascended. These events have been documented in history. So I would, when I say I predict that there are enough of us now, there's a good quantity of human beings that when the higher dimensional universe, and we have proof of this now, with the project of the Vanishing and Appearing Star project, that they are actually seeing on telescopes whole stars and planets appearing in our telescopes for a period of time and then vanishing and then reappearing. So we can see this higher dimensional universe physically appearing in our dimension and then going back up. And when it goes back up, it takes people with it. And we have records of this in our ancient past. So it's kind of like harvesting a crop where enough humans reach this higher state that they no longer have to live with the muck, and they get taken up, and the rest of the people who refuse to evolve end up living together in their own quagmires. So there are predictions. What I'm saying from Edgar Casey, Alice Bailey, Gene Dixon, the number I just got, which takes me to June 1st of 2025 and Christmas of 2025 and mid-August of 2025, actually. But does that mean that those dates are fixed, that something visual will happen on that date? It might be an interior, it might be a moment for our interior state to make this quantum leap. I actually experience it every day in the supreme bliss state. That really happens every day, that through the third eye, you actually see the higher dimensional earth. You actually see it and experience it. And in this experience that happens to me every day, there's no question that the supreme being is right here and lives here and is never left. But what makes it appear that it left is the lower state of consciousness, which is fear. Fear is an enormous weapon against the masses to keep their kundalini down, to keep pulling it down. So when we no longer buy into fear and we start raising our vibration, we have evidence now of whole planets and stars appearing and disappearing. And I've done huge amounts of math on the date of these appearances and gotten access to the Palomar Observatory photographs of this actually occurring, which I could present here sometime if people are interested. So we know that psychically, when I don't mean psychic, I mean psychically as in cycles. I have a little bit of a Daffy Duck accent. So you can see when these events have occurred, and even in our recent past. So I think that there's a moment coming upon us where a large group of us, and I'm talking millions and millions of humans, will at the very least experience such an increase in their state of consciousness that they'll actually even no longer be interested in participating in the products, the services, and the food. So the product, services, and food, if we don't buy it physically with our money, it dies. So when you no longer buy those products, services, and foods, then the whole earth goes to another level. It goes to a completely different level. And that level is upon us.
Beautiful. Sorry, enchanted by this fractal image. Let this play out. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's
beautiful.
It parallels beautifully what you were saying. Wonderful. So I want to invite Elana here to take center stage on this next piece. Elana, the question is, how does HARP's 4 Hertz pulse influence the Schumann resonance and in turn the biological and consciousness development of humanity? And could this artificial frequency be designed to suppress certain evolutionary aspects of humanity? Well, obviously it bloody can, and that's the point of why it's being exercised. But just riff a little bit on that, on the HARP 4 Hertz pulse, the influence and the Schumann resonance.
Yes, just to assume that everyone knows what the Schumann resonance is, there's a wonderful film which is free on the internet. I think it's called Resonance Beings, and it is really fantastic to watch because you begin to see the human being. One of the best things, we're talking a lot about frequencies, which is great, vibration, pulses. The human being is very resonant, friendly, and resonance sensitive. So this can be a curse and a blessing. because we can be actually whelmed by a frequency weapon, for example, that will go straight to our brain, and every frequency, everything has a frequency. And it appears to me in my sort of what I call my CIA consciousness that that a lot of people who are manipulating people through targeting, things like targeting, which is very much a frequency science, and assault on people who do not deserve it and have no free will involved and have not given permission or anything, that there you can see how we can be taken over when we go into alpha state, when we're watching television or watching a movie. This is all the way it is. All right, one thing I think you don't know about, because it has been incredibly suppressed, is the 4 Hertz frequency that HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project in Gakona, Alaska, what I call the HAARP system, which really entails the use of other ionospheric heaters, radar installations, your cell phone, everything that can be calibrated to work together, that is electromagnetic, is engaged in this, simply not particularly by consent and conspiracy theory or any of that, but because of the resonance. All right, so Clifford Carnicom, the scientist who has done the lion's share of work on geoengineering and what it has done to us, and what it is doing to us, and what it will be doing to us, he back in 2000, by 2005, he had measured this pulse coming from HAARP. And how did he know it was HAARP? Well, it's a matter of Van de Graaff tracking, I suppose you would call it. And he noticed that it was pulsing in the atmosphere. So, he was definitely testing the atmosphere, along with catching various things after the high-flying jets, military and commercial, would leave this flotsam and jetsam behind the engine compartment. And he was able to get some of the condensation from that, etc. So I joined with him in about 2005. So I've been dogging his trail and taking other trails ever since. I'm just going to read this because I want to be exact. The artificial ELF, extra low frequency or extremely low frequency, propagation at 4 Hertz multiples are being infused into our modified atmosphere to create a cyclotronic resonance that affects our biologically important ions of sodium, calcium, potassium, and lithium. And this is due to the calibration of the HAARP instruments. And this is going on. It's not something that you particularly notice. It's not like a metronome, bum, bum, bum. But it is very much affecting our endocrine system. Well, so what? There's lots of things connecting that are affecting us on the scale of pollution going on from the sky, the aerosols, the military operations that we are not told about. There are many ways to look at this, but I think one of the most important parts of this is that this appears to be seamlessly also connecting us to the cloud internet. All right, what would that mean? Well, that would have to do with the smart grid, wouldn't it? That would have to do with brain-computer interface, BCI, or brain-machine interface, whichever term. Okay, so that's another part of this. It isn't just the endocrine system. It's also our brain. This has to do with the Schumann resonance, because the Schumann resonance is 7.83, which is what our brain used to pulse at. Used to, I say. You can go to a site today and check the Schumann resonance. I'm not sure if they lie at that site or not, but you see that the Schumann resonance is all over the place. One day I went and looked, it was 13 hertz, it wasn't 7.83. Another day I looked, it was 32 hertz. So this technology that I'm tracking, this geoengineering technology, has this capability because it is exceedingly electromagnetic and chemical. It's both. And both of those are operate very powerfully on the human body. So thanks to the HARP ionosphere Keter system's control over the ionosphere, which was accomplished by 2013, I might add. There's a wonderful little video of the Senate hearing in Alaska regarding the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, asking about HARP and the Air Force responding, yes, DARPA was able to give us total control over the ionosphere. All right, so thanks to the HARP ionosphere Keter system's control over the ionosphere, our ionized atmosphere keeps the 4 hertz pulse trained on our endocrine system as well as our consciousness soul development. Now this is me, consciousness soul development. It's a term from Rudolf Steiner. He talks about how the soul has different capacities, and one of them that we've depended on for, I don't know, thousands of years is the intellectual soul, the one that can put facts together and can logically have common sense and that sort of thing. But there's another part of the soul that became active, says Rudolf Steiner, in 1413, which is the consciousness soul. Now, the difference between the intellectual soul and the consciousness soul is that the intellectual soul is very good at data. I mean, you know, our PhD programs are a perfect example of consciousness, of intellectual soul work. But if you want to get to the meaning of something, and this broaches our emphasis on the cosmic and on our consciousness growing spiritually and expansively, you're going to need the consciousness soul. And it appears that this 4 hertz may be interfering with that, because a lot of people I talk to, I don't know about you, but they seem kind of programmed to me. And they're not able to put one thought in front of the other. And so, you know, we've got this buzzword thing. We've got this bumper sticker politics. We've got little 3-minute things on the internet. But who's reading? Why is Elana even writing these books in an era where people don't read anymore, and they can't hold what they're reading? They can't unlock it and follow along. And so that is, to me, the 4 hertz has to do with that as well. It is, in a way, not replacing our Schumann resonance, but crippling it might be a way I could put it. And so with the HARP system's perennial broadcast of the 4 hertz pulse, could it be that this burgeoning part of the human being that we're all talking about, the consciousness soul is definitely involved in what we're talking about, that part of us is purposely being kept asleep. And if you look at the frequencies, you'll see that the theta, I think it's the sleep frequency is around 4 hertz. So that's why that's so crucial, and I wanted you to know that.
Very good, thank you. Dr. Ling, your reflections on that.
Okay, yes, we have been working with the Schumann resonance for a while, and we have been actually able to connect to Scotland, where the Schumann resonance, the real-time Schumann resonance, has been actually measured. So a lot of information which is on the internet is actually out of data by the time you really see it. And the Schumann resonance, yes, it fluctuates between 7 point and about 10. Sometimes it goes a little bit higher, which is just a natural kind of spectrum of the Earth's frequencies. But Yes, HARP definitely has an impact on these kind of things, as it is working with frequencies, and it does have an impact on so many things in nature. However, I do believe, I have great faith, and I have to say that, in humanity. And I do know that over the last year or two, maybe even a bit longer for some people, people have upgraded, if you want to use that kind of terminology, their frequencies to the point that they are really aligned with the new frequencies which we are surrounded with. And I'm not talking from the artificial kind of 3D frequencies. I do believe that the water has had a certain coding over the last, especially over the last 12 months. We have seen enormous changes in Earth's frequencies, inflicting the waters of this planet, where suddenly we are all also rising our frequencies to the point that we are connecting with the true consciousness and the consciousness of water, which is a really important point. So yes, I do argue sometimes with people who talk about Schumann resonance, because it is a very kind of difficult subject as such, and there's so much misinformation out there. But in essence, yes, our planet is reflecting, of course, these kind of influences from the HARP as well. But as I said, I think that we are moving on into something where we can override these kind of artificial influences being created by these individuals trying to keep us in this space where we are not connecting with the true consciousness.
Very good. Thank you. Well, friends, as we're winding toward the end, I want to open the last question. I want to bring David Sereda in next, followed by Jane Evershed, and I'll move on thereafter. But chaos or evolution, the pace of change, technological, ecological, societal, cultural, civilizational, feels like abject chaos. As I was alluding to in my opening piece about the thousands of conversations I'm continuously having in all climes around the world, and the one unified theme is this kind of apocalypse in everyone's life. So the individual and the collective level, that's kind of the critical thematic is chaos. But the pace of change, technological, ecological, and so on, feels chaotic. But are we on the verge of collapse? Or is this endemic planetary turbulence a sign of evolution and evolving into higher states of order and consciousness? Well, anyone who knows anything about anything connected to the Lazarus inquiry knows that the answer is a resounding yes. Of course, we are on the verge of upshift. There's no question about that. But as we depart the intended ordo ab chaos, a construence of the Sabbatean, Luciferic, Saturnian, Atlantean logic of old that really defined perfectly the geometry of the fucked upness of this reality hologram, the war, disease, poverty one. As we now know that the new dreaming beckons and invites us to convene ourselves as the living gospel, the true technology, the interface between Alpha, Omega, and the waters of the world, and dreaming the new dream into manifest reality. And God knows it can only be a blissful, an ecstatic, and euphoric process and outcome. That's a given to all those of us who are operating at frequency X and above. Let me put it that way: heart frequency and above. But I'm keen to know from each of you what your prognosis is moving from this Atlantean, fallen light of Atlantis, so to speak, into this new Earth horizon. What is your deepest sense? I don't want to get sciencey here. I just want to get the intuitive gut feeling as to where we're headed as the Fellowship of Man. David Sereda.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing it already. We're seeing that our icons have failed us. We've seen not only the Catholic Church, but the Christian churches, sexually abuse millions and millions of people, so that we no longer give, like, even the idea, and I know a realtor who told me this story, people feel so guilty for their supposed sins when they die, they sell their estate and give it to the church, which empowers that iconographic structure in our civilization to make bigger and bigger buildings. And if the building is bigger, then people are kind of brainwashed to think, well, God must live there. And so you go in. And now we have this new documentary about, this guru in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'm not even going to say his name on the air, but we're seeing how he failed everybody in his organization tremendously and sexually abused children. So we're finding that we've got to build our own model in our own home, in our own community. We shouldn't turn our back on method and practice and prayer, but we're losing our empowering others to build these huge businesses and enterprises that have failed us. So that is the shift, because when you no longer feed it, you no longer buy into that the Catholic Church has all this power over you, it will crumble like a cookie over time. And then so you have to look at, when you negate, when you're awake, the first stage is what you don't like. We got to get rid of it, stop feeding it money. But then you have to identify a positive, a new way of being without rejecting your own personal connection to Logos, which is the true definition of God in the Gospels. So that means you have to find a new way, because if you don't have any way, you just become an anti-particle. You become a response to negative. So if you're a response to negative, you're still not really positive. You're just response to negative. And right now, I think all of us are fed up with the government. We're fed up with the war machine and feeding the war machine, literally feeding it. And then, which is every time, we decide to believe in the fear that it's propagating. And once we free up that money, which is our money, because people have all the money in the world, the government doesn't have the money in the world unless you pay them. So when you start feeding money as energy into what you do want as a positive, we'll build the new world. But if we don't do that, we're just going to remain the antiparticle to what is perceived as that which failed us. And it's very important to do this, because if we don't give money to what we want to build as the new world, it won't happen for a long time. But if we keep feeding, we still have these residual, shames and guilt about our being, and we think we have to, give the church and the industries all our money before we die so that we can go to heaven. I mean, that's a philosophy that devoured the world for the last 2,000 years. That if you do this, then you're going to be somehow forgiven. Well, you're feeding that monster, and it's devouring it. So where are we going to go next? We can't just be the antiparticle, is what I'm saying. We have to actually engage and say, this is the new world I want to build. I'm going to give it my energy and my money, which is my energy, so that it can grow.
Very good. Well, that's it. The distinction between consciousness itself and consciousness in action, which is really the prerogative of the actualized human. And that augurs the resurrection or the return of the angelic human. Jane Evershed, I was so hoping that you hadn't returned to your chair by the time I put you on the screen, because teacher noticed that you went absent for about 90 seconds there. But yeah, your closing reflections on today's beautiful conversation.
Well, I have so much, Sacha. I don't know where to begin, because what we've left out, there wouldn't be any of these things to even discuss if the feminine frequency had been honored from the beginning, because it was in our original sacred life blueprint that we would never be in this state. That's how the original plan was, that we would never get to this point at all, because the most sacred geometry we have is when you have the balance of the masculine and feminine. So we could wax all day about every violation perpetrated upon us humans, via the soil, the water, and the air, and everything else. But if we don't go back to that sacred divine model of consciousness, the model that produces pure consciousness and all matter, antimatter, antimatter, and matter, which is the balance with female and masculine energy combined. So this is what we have to do. But I'm not speaking from like a feminist, disgusting point of view here at all. And I'm not asking for some anemic allowance from men. What I'm saying is that the masculine and the feminine must merge at some point and get together to form this original Trinity sacred pattern and use it as a template for going forward in our lives today. I was looking at water. Water has that magic Trinity connection with the three, the 2 hydrogen and the oxygen, which might be of interest to Alex. And that's the sound and the light when the oxygen and the hydrogen meet is the masculine and the feminine. Then we have that, the source energy. That is what we need to connect with, that pure consciousness, organic, spiritual trinity of the angelic human consciousness that we seem to like forget about in every single thing we do, because all matter that is formed away from that divine template is the stuff we're talking about today that is flying around in the atmosphere and killing us.
Beautiful.
Enough
Thanks very
of a
much.
synopsis.
Yeah, I love that. I knew you're batting for the goddess, and just so you folks know, there is a segment coming up in the symposium dedicated to this subject matter that is discoursed by Jane in such exemplary fashion. And we're talking about the Magdalene, the spirit of the Magdalene, the life and times of the Magdalene herself, and a fascinating conversation. So be sure to tune in to that. Dave, Emery, beloved friend, your closing thoughts on today's discussion.
Well, today's conversation, the discussion has been absolutely electric. It's been wonderful. And it's been magnetic as well. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the erudite information that's been given by all of the panelists here. I've learned such a lot, and it really is. We're all on the same, singing from the same hymn sheet, as if I may use that phrase. Yes, back in the 80s, I read a book called The Polarity Principle, and that was sketching out the possibility that eventually consciousness energy shifts in a collective, so that what happens eventually, ultimately, is that one set of consciousness, reality fields, moves one way and another one moves the other way. And which way do they move? They move largely in the ways that Dr. Alex has been talking about, and also Elana and David too, how they move in terms of the purity of consciousness, the celestial aspect of our own divinity, and into those electrostatic positions whereby there is no more thinking, there is no more feeling, there is no more connection with the ultimate all that is. So that is, I believe, really what is happening now, that those of us who have the consciousness particle expanded and constantly expanding will move in one direction, and those who don't, and who have chosen, shall we say, electrostatic as opposed to electrodynamic existence, are going to go in another. And I think that is what we're seeing, because a lot of people, as Elana has said, are asleep, and it's nothing to do with intelligence. It's to do with something else. It's to do with conscious awareness of self. And in the end, all that we are talking about comes down to identity. It's who do we believe that we are, and how much of the divinity of Source do we believe that we hold within us.
Beautiful. Thank you. Beautifully stated. Dr. Alex Ling, your closing reflections on today's conversation. You'll need to unmute.
I believe that everybody, every single human on this planet here has a choice. And I think we have had those choices when we were younger in our lifetime to decide which way we're going to be. And sometimes we get into a different situation where we have to choose again. So, but I think since the last 2 years, I think we're all on our path. And yes, it is right that some people maybe have not reached that conscious level to really fully understand what it is happening. But what I can say is that also through water, we all are connecting. And even the ones which we believe are not really on the same path as we are, will be affected at some points by this knowledge we all gained and this connection we all have. We all one. Nobody is going to be left behind. And I think that 25 will show this enormous shift which is going through humanity, that we can all be a part of this original blueprint of the water and the creators as we are. So, and that is all also mainly through one element which we all know so well, which is love.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alex. Elana, I'd like to get your final to picture on today's conversation, and as the sign off, please, you've got the floor.
Well, I've really appreciated everyone's opinions, because I live in a little cocoon now of writing and research, and I need to be reminded of other ways of looking at the my present life. I think that I feel very strongly that if you are not looking at your incarnation and why now and what is going on and what can I do and that sort of thing, that you're really cheating yourself. And I know that the people here today are not doing that, and it gives me strength and courage and faith that there are those of us who are sort of a phalanx out front, who are in a way dragging humanity behind us in our small ways, so that we can all evolve. What I'm concerned about is that this electromagnetic era and the technology in it is going to take our free will, is going to attempt to take our free will, and make us go in a direction that we don't want. And that's what I didn't get to today, but maybe another time, and you'll find it in the books, the connection between geoengineering and synthetic biology is very much a big pharma outfit and has to do with what is jabbed in our bodies. So we have our challenges, and I'm not worried about me. I'm on the trail, and I'm not worried about you either. But I do carry, in a certain Christian way, the rest of humanity that the media is lying to, the media is manipulating, governments are manipulating. I do carry them, and I know that I can't save them. I know that. But I can put information out so that if they make the choice to learn and realize that knowledge is power, that at least I will have done my part with my good brain and my love of knowledge to give them a chance at really taking hold of a higher consciousness that is completely for them, just as it is for us.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. Wonderful sentiments, beautifully expressed. And friends, that brings us to the end. Let me just bring the panel on there. Brings us to the end of this opening segment. We're going to go dark now to the public at large, because this was being seen by a very considerable audience. I'm not sure if it was a record audience, but I think it was, judging by the comments coming through from Christy there. So beautifully attended. Thank you very much indeed to the audience out there. We're going to go dark in a moment and only into Lazarus members. But I just want to thank my guests again. I'd like to thank Elana. I'd like to thank Alex. I'd like to thank David Sereda, David Emery, and Jane Evershed for joining me today. Friends, thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you, Sacha.
Thank you.
Ringo Starr and David Sereda do the V sign. There we go.
Have a happy New Year, everybody.
Indeed, happy New Year. And as I wind this up to the audience, let me just say I'm on a plane in a few hours' time. I'm in Southern Africa now. I'll take a long bath, stay awake through the night, and I'll be on a plane in a few hours to Southeast Asia. Christy, take a note. I think we should do the next symposium from Bali. I've got my beloved King Raja Samu Samu of Indonesia, King of Kings, beautiful, beautiful soul. I'll be meeting him. He'll be coming into Bali. And I will also have hereditary leader Phil Lane Jr., the Eagle, beautiful man, coming in representing the great prophecy and the First Nation tribal collectives of North America, coming in to meet with the King of Kings of Indonesia and other kings that are going to be in attendance at New Earth Haven in Bali, and the date will be announced probably next week. But that's going to be the coming together of the Redskins in that sense, and the Yellowskins in that sense, and a formidable coming together of ceremony. The pipe of Crazy Horse himself will be brought by hereditary leader Phil Lane Jr. and of course the Eagle, representing the Eagle. It's going to be powerful stuff, big ceremony. I'm going to be doing this all in Bali. Christy, I'm just thinking it'd be great to anchor the next Lazarus in Bali, albeit it'll fall short by a week. So, because I'll be flying out on the 24th from Bali to Mexico to Bacalar. But whilst I'm there with these extraordinary characters, maybe we can construe a bit of a ceremony for Lazarus members with these great souls in attendance, and we'll have many, many hundreds and hundreds of people turning up at New Earth Haven and my villa in Bali, which Jane, of course, you visited, so you know full well. Up to 1,000 people turn up there at a time for ceremony. So in any event, friends, that's just a little hint about what I'll be up to the next couple of weeks. I'm setting together the coming together of the hereditary leaders of the Americas and Southeast Asia. And I'll be back here in Africa to do the same. I've been meeting various kings of kings and paramount chiefs and so on in the last 4.5 months. I've spent most of that time, 80% of it, in Africa, precisely meeting those hereditary leaders and elders in order to convene the conversation, the greater conversation, to bring them together into convention one way or the other. And I'll also be starting my US tour. It's a social tour, which is the only kind of tour I enjoy, launching at the Conscious Life Expo, February, I think 7th, 8th, 9th. Again, Christy, you can interject or put up the dates kindly on the comment section so people looking in get the corrected date. And then I'm moving on across a number of states to Tennessee, ending up in Tennessee. The plan is not solstice, what's it called? The equinox. We should be arriving in Tennessee, the land that we are acquiring right now. Beautiful, beautiful land. And yes, Alex, it has its own river running through it in Tennessee. That's designated as the New Earth Tennessee or Tanasi project, which is redolent of the true name given it by the Cherokee Nation, who founded Tanasi, which then evolved into the fiction of Tennessee. But we are working to bleach the soil of the liens, federal, crown, Vatican, military war power liens on the soil, and then turn that soil back to the First Nation hereditary leaders represented, I'm anticipating, by the Hopi, the Cherokee, and the Eagle and Condor, and some other great sagacious elders, grandmothers who will be in attendance. That's an act of atonement that we intend. I spoke about that when I was with Dr. Alex Ling in Mexico doing ceremony on the 8th of April, correct, Alex? When we were at the epicenter of the trajectory of the solar eclipse that occurred over North America, which really was the dateline that augured the onset of the atonement. And my promise was that what I picked up at that time was we have to deal with America. Bacalar Laguna in Mexico, beautiful. New Earth Africa, Bali, great. All these other wonderful places. America is ground zero. And we must now turn our attention to America as it is intended I mean, it is the epicenter of the human condition and the human experiment, and the galactic experiment for that matter. So all eyes on Middle America in 2025. And with Trump, a bit of this, a bit of that, and Bobby Kennedy and others, firebrands coming in, wielding the greatest sword of St. Michael, without any question of doubt that is happening. These archetypes are wielding the sword. I know the conversations that go around, and these somewhat hapless folks who are caught in the crack in the conversation. And, oh, Trump's just a controlled, yeah, but I'm a controlled narrative. I'm a controlled agent, right? I mean, I've spent 25 damn years in the public domain, bleeding in public, and wheezing on a daily basis, but somehow I find the time to attend ritual child sacrifices alongside Elon Musk, apparently the latest Jane Doe on a tribunal with a pixelated face and detuned voice is swearing on a Bible that she witnessed Sacha Stone and Elon Musk participating at a ritual child sacrifice. Well, and that kind of thing, So we all influences variously here with Elana. The work she's doing is a target. Be sure of that. Jane Evershed would be a target, except she inhabits this kind of multifarious, hyperdimensional existence. No one could actually train a gun on her. But David Sereda and his background is a tremendous threat to the status quo. Dr. Alex Ling, who represents, again, the breakaway generation from the arcane Midnight Masonic traditions, is a tremendous target and is targeted and has been targeted. I've been with him for many weeks this year, and I've seen it firsthand myself, and it's not pretty. Dave Emery, of course, discoursing on galactic history, snapping the spinal cord of the Babylonian narrative on history and cosmology and cosmogenesis and so on. So each of us here and all the hundreds of very brilliant polymaths who attend as speakers the Lazarus Symposium in service to the greater inquiry are the epicenter, the bullseye in that sense of the target. That's to be expected. And I guess in some perverse sense, we welcome that because we know that we're over the target. And when I say we, I'm enjoining the greater fellowship of this beautiful audience of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who do look in and watch one way or the other through the syndication. So thank you for all. I'll be back in the US touring starting 7th of February, ending up in Tennessee 21st, 22nd of March. And then I'll be touring, I think, 22 countries in Europe next year and 8 countries in the Mediterranean, I believe. So those tour dates will be announced in January. But that's my last wrap up of 2024. And for myself, I am thrilled, delighted to be departing 2024. It has been an apocalyptic year for me personally on so many levels. I don't go into the public on that, but the deaths that I've sustained very close, that stuff. And I'm speaking as every man because I know that everyone out there can speak to the same travesty, calamity, and the trial of separation in your own life and profession. We're all feeling it, baby. That's the point. But let's feel the greater pulse of fellowship as we now move into 2025 and begin to group our plasma into this new dreaming. So that's my sign off for today. I think Christy wants me to mention only one other thing here, which is that we are launching the Lazarus website, a new Lazarus website with an AI functioning search engine. Because part of the problem is all the work that Elana's done. I've got many, many, many hours of her, many hours of Jane, of Dave Sereda, of Dave Emery, and hundreds of others, Dr. Ling. How do people get that information? We're being banned on every platform, believe you me. Maybe we stay afloat in Rumble, but we go up on YouTube, on social media, and we are breaching, social norms and community guidelines, whatever the fuck that means. And so all the information, 90% of it kind of disappears. And we believe that we've got a means by which we can really galvanize that huge archive of work that we've all been doing with the Lazarus Symposia and with the Lazarus Initiative. And that website will be launching in January. So I think I've covered everything. Thank you again to my audience for being gracious enough to listen to my closing comments. And to you, the audience, stand by. You are going into the next segment, which is this one here. The discovery, cracking the simulation code. And believe you me, this is staggering. This man, Danny Gola, has managed to create a interdimensional, hyperdimensional portal and access, which he can teach you at home. You can do it yourself, but I'm warning you, be prepared to have your mind absolutely blown apart. Now, I'm going to be trying to rope in some heavyweight scientists. I want David Sereda involved on this in particular to help to investigate what it is that Danny Gola has cracked this simulation code. I'm going to leave it at that. Quite an enigmatic statement there, but trust me, friends, it's all good. Elana, thank you. Jane, thank you. Dr. Ling, thank you. I see the others have bailed on us. And Christy, thank you very much indeed. All right, friends, over to you, Christy. Lazarus, today, the discovery, cracking the simulation code with Danny Gola. Danny is an independent researcher, filmmaker, and self-proclaimed explorer of altered states of consciousness. And his unique journey blends technology, psychedelics, and a desire to push the boundaries of human perception. Not something very familiar with the Lazarus Symposium. Gola's groundbreaking discovery of a visible repeating code using a diffracted laser while under the influence of DMT has sparked curiosity and debate about the nature of reality. And you can find more information about Danny's work at www.codeofreality.com. And I have to say, as part of my preamble, that this is exactly the kind of segment which 3 years ago I invoked into the symposium. I'm very, very pleased at this kind of manifestation. People like Danny are now taking center stage in exploring the frontiers of consciousness and the fabric of so-called reality. You know, I always refer to reality as so-called reality because there's no such fucking thing as reality. It's always entirely subjective in that sense. But there is something called isness, the ground of being, Atman. And that really is where I think in a state of witness, we need to take our thrones as living sons and daughters of God, as emperors of the universe. We need to each of us have the humility to sit upon those thrones in the state of nowness, isness, Atman, and be open to the great revelation that brave and noble souls bring before us. That is how we do it ourselves without the interference of the Anunnaki, without the interference of the God Kings and the Babylonian priesthoods, friends. So sit back and enjoy. I'm going to play a very short piece that Christy, producer, is insisting we run at the front end, so stand by.
I remember things very vividly from a very young age. When I was a little kid, I actually spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was a nuclear physicist. I remember he was telling me about black holes, and that terrified me.
I was like, that's just mind-boggling. It's a monster, right?
But at the same time, it fascinated me. And I said to myself, how do we know that? This unthinkably massive thing. I realized that nature doesn't keep secrets. It's only a matter of, do we understand? What tools can we use to expand our knowledge? And for me, dimethyltryptamine, also known as DMT, was the tool that led me to the discovery.
when I first saw the phenomenon, it was like, holy shit!
But then it was actually like, whoa, what is happening?
Am I losing my mind? But then I showed other people, and things kept getting weirder.
Just for the record, I haven't told him anything. Okay, just tell me what you see.
Oh my God, come on.
Wow, what the fuck? Holy shit. I just saw something. Yeah. What the fuck?
Oh, I see that. I feel it.
I've been under the influence of mind-altering substances a lot, but I've never seen anything like that. Whoa.
I showed over 100 people, and I kept asking myself, how are all of us seeing the same thing?
Oh my God. It's changing shapes right there.
The laser was revealing numbers and letters running in a pattern.
They're almost like this big here, and it looks like code.
It looked like programming code.
It's definitely saying something, and I just want to take a picture of it and translate it.
Wow.
You see that?
Okay, so yeah, it's not stuck.
No.
It's not because of the light.
No, it's on its own side. Light is just literally revealing it.
And each angle shows you different layers, different ways through it.
I can see through the wall. It's not like a hallucination. It has spatial awareness and permanence. I don't know. Whoa.
For centuries, mankind has attempted to explore these psychedelic, altered states, but we've never had a repeatable, testable phenomenon to observe until now.
Wow.
I'm obsessed.
It's like you can see through the laser into another dimension.
I mean, like, take yourself to that. Like, I just made a connection that nobody made before, which is a simple connection. The claim is, if you project a diffracted laser on a surface and you smoke DMT, you will see code running in surfaces. Yes, like in the Matrix.
So there are a few possibilities. One,
I lost my mind, which is the coolest losing your mind ever in history.
The second option is that
this is the biggest discovery of humankind. If anybody ever asked themselves what it would be like to know you live in the Matrix for sure, well, I know for sure. I'm convinced.
So where do we go from here? All I know is
it's about to get crazy.
To say you don't get more enigmatic than that. Without any further ado, friends, please meet Danny Gola. Danny, good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Sacha. I appreciate that.
Well, you know, I have to give you a trigger warning. I've never touched anything in my life. I've never chewed a mushroom. I've never puffed marijuana. I've never done anything in my life. And I'm utterly fascinated by the subject. This piece that you've tapped into. I'm as enthusiastic as any human being on the planet could be to learn the nature of this revelation that you've stumbled upon. My first question is, did you intuit this? Did you dream it into being? What takes a man to setting up a diffracted laser with DMT and experimenting? What was the initial impulse there?
It was aimed at. I was trying to figure it out, and as I've discovered along the way, it basically is a combination of intuition and mind working together. So basically, it's it's a set of all kinds of like strong feelings that occur at the right time. So obviously intuition, and then combined with some things that I do understand about the world. And as I was moving through this weird maze for years, I realized that actually this is how we figure out everything.
Yeah,
it's just we tend to take the credit, but because we don't postulate there's anything out there, actually telling us certain things. Some people, it sounds like from the way that you're introducing yourself and from what I read about you, this is something that people like you understand very strongly early on, but not everybody does. Not everybody understands this, right? And in, I guess, what we call the modern world, some people call it a separation, whatever it is. I think it's just a form of confusion. People think of their understandings and discoveries as purely their own versus a collaboration, some kind of a process by which it's a relationship with everything else that's going on. And yes, I know that you would align with this message very much, but one of the things that I find sometimes difficult is to communicate this to people that are more just, purely scientifically minded. But I'm interested to bring it to a larger understanding in a real functional way versus I'm not talking about it metaphorically. I'm saying, that it actually is telling you things. You just need to know how to listen, basically.
Very good. Wow. What was your initial interpretation of the repeating patterns and how did it shape your understanding of reality? But I also want to know what a diffracted laser is as opposed to just a laser.
Diffracted laser just means it's split into parts by a particular lens. So the double slit experiment that everybody are familiar with is the simplest diffraction, basically. And then diffracting it more is just putting more slits. Really. Okay. And then you make the lens have to match the frequency of the light or the wavelength, so it will diffract it in a particular way. That's all. So it's just like everybody are familiar with it. It's the same thing you use in the supermarket to scan products. Yeah.
Understood. So your initial interpretation of the repeating patterns that you saw?
I didn't have an initial interpretation. At first, I didn't know what to make of it because I was aiming for it for years, and it was, numbers are talking to me. Like I would see like a particular pattern on the ground that would match a thing, and then I would go and check, and it would match some kind of so it's a very kind of like, I always say, it's kind of like Charlie Day in the basement connecting dots, right? So after years of this, all of a sudden, and the whole time it was just a game. It wasn't one of these things that, took over my life and I now have to drop everything and do that. Like I didn't go that far. I was just living my life, and whenever it would show up, I would interact with it. So by the end, when it came to fruition and I'm turning on this laser and smoke DMT and I see the code, I didn't have there was a small part of me that thought maybe this is a schizophrenic outbreak because, I'm aiming towards this thing, and what are the chances that you make such a discovery, right? It's kind of like delusions of grandeur. So that was more plausible to me than actually seeing it. Now, I knew that can't be true because I know my mind and I know that I feel normal. And when I started showing other people that it's everybody started saying the same thing. I think directly to your question, the real revelation came maybe a little bit almost a year after, where I was already showing a bunch of people, and then things started happening to me personally in the DMT space that are outside of what, at least for what I spoke so far with very experienced psychonauts, it's really not on the map. So a computer console appeared for me. So like, we're talking not like a hallucination, but we're talking like, imagine, how Tony Stark has these menus that come up from like augmented reality kind of thing, like this. And it has been appearing for me since 100% of the time. It just comes on. It's the most beautifully designed thing. So I call it the console. So the console, coupled with the fact that I asked point blank, wait, are you simulating this? And I was shown. So I was just shown exactly how it's done. That's the moment where I really was like, oh, I don't think that. I know that now. And then this process became about how do you integrate this information? What does that really mean? How do you communicate this to other people without destabilizing their psychology and cultural tapestry, right? So, and the best way I found is that, well, to what you said in the beginning of the conversation, which is like so-called reality, it really depends how you look at it, right? I think the isness that you've mentioned is the reality, right? So as long as there's isness anywhere, that's reality. And
Yes.
in that sense, it doesn't matter if it's in a computer, it doesn't matter if it's a brain in a vat, it doesn't matter if it's a Boltzmann brain that just created for a picosecond and thinks it has all the memories that it does and then it disappears. Makes no difference whatsoever. If it existed in reality with any kind of isness, that's reality. And that's the important part to take on board. I think that's also what essentially the Buddha discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly right. So the role of psychedelics in scientific exploration. I mean, some noble souls have gone ahead, especially in the 60s, 50s and the 60s, possibly the early 70s. A number of pioneering figures were involved in exploring and surfing psychedelics. Of course, there was also the connection of that with the Project Monarch and MK Ultra and CIA stuff, which was a very nefarious aspect of it. But what you're doing seems to be very progressive and exploratory in the true pioneering sense. It's clear that you don't have an agenda. You're not looking to harness an aspect of this craft in order to, commandeer humans and fulfill Sabbatean agendas like Aleister Crowley or whoever. So it's clear to me that you're a true frontiersman in that you are genuinely stripped naked and curious as hell about what this revelation is. What is the nature of this revelation? That to me is primal innocence at work. And it's also where the grace of God reveals itself to the eyes of the child. So I like what I hear and what I see, because that's how I'm seeing it. But in the role of psychedelics in scientific exploration, in your mind, how do altered states of consciousness, such as those induced by DMT, contribute to our otherwise mundane understanding of reality?
So first of all, thank you for the kind words. It does mean a lot. I do feel the sincerity of your comments, so I thank you for that. And yes, I do feel that it's acting through me more than like it's a me thing. It's also what helps me not, get too lost in my ego and all that good stuff when you start getting any kind of attention. And psychedelics, I think that the answer is pretty on the surface. It's what John Vervaeke is talking about, he calls it something else, but the emergency of meaning. I forget the word that he's using, but it's basically that meaning was sucked out of our regular lives. We used to derive meaning from there's something about new kinds of interactions with the world that is now missing, because everything is packaged for you, and everything is like what's coming. So there's no novelty of any kind. And because of that, you know when you're going to be at work, like everything is kind of like set up for you. So you never interact with this novelty, and that sucked the meaning out of culture, and that creates an emergency, because we are meaning-driven beings. We think of it in terms of like other things, but it's always meaning at the bottom of it. Either it's great sex, great food, relationships. It's always this thing, this illusory thing we call meaning. It's like it's the connection to whatever the world is. And psychedelics are a meaning aperture. That's how I see them. So I've had this experience on ayahuasca one time where I saw a red cloth and it was redder. And I've had a lot of psychedelic experience before then, but it just all of a sudden dawned on me that, like, why is it redder? Because I know there's no more light, and I know there's nothing happens to my actual photon receptors. So I was like, and then the thought came, which I think came from the other space, and said, well, there is a channel along which things are in relationship to themselves. It's the essence channel. So there is such a thing as red in ultimate existence. And what you're seeing now is more of what that redness is. That's why it's just redder. And you see the meaning of what red is. And this is also why you see deeper connections on psychedelics. This is also why you connect to people more, because you see more of what they really are. So again, directly to your question, some people are naturally better. I would assume, again, I don't know much about you as a person privately, but I would assume that if you haven't touched anything ever, it must have something to do with the fact that you already have all the meaning you have, and you derive it from just living life the way you do. And that means that you have some kind of a pretty deep connection to, like you're being guided constantly and you're open to that. Again, I don't know you personally, but usually that is what's happening in cases like these. And because sometimes it's fear, but you don't strike me as a fearful person, so I would assume it would be that. And for some people, it's not the case. For some people, they just don't have that muscle, or they were just not lucky enough to ever interact with that in a way that will even tell them it's there. They need more of that essential component in life. So I think that's what psychedelics allow for. They allow to experience the fact that it's possible to have more of whatever this present moment brings. And then, because it's just, it's almost like a tool, it's like a button, like it opens it. You do need to put in the work. Like after you're done, the psychedelics got me into meditation, and like I derived a lot more from practicing Vipassana for years than doing a lot of psychedelics. They helped a lot to show me that something is there, but you have to put in the work on the daily basis to actually work that muscle, and how you talk to people, how you connect to communities. All of that stuff is part of what really brings meaning on a regular basis. Psychedelics can give you a hint, a glimmer. If you're fully stuck in the matrix, so to speak, they can open that and go like, oh, like there's something there you want to consider.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, I have to say, I've been very connected to drug culture my whole life. I mean, my whole life since I grew up in Africa in a war zone, so there weren't any drugs there. But after the age of 17, when I was dispatched to Europe from Africa, I kind of landed in sort of very wealthy circles of corrupted people who were, living on fine grade heroin and cocaine. I'm talking about intelligentsia, mafia, judges, celebrities, kind of fringe Illuminati, aristocracy. And that culture then became something, my circle, rock and roll, for the next 10 years was also steeped in that culture. I've had it always around and close at hand. But in any event, I digress. That to me doesn't scare me, the business of doing things. But Vipassana, you just mentioned, does scare the hell out of me. And I have huge respect for anyone who can do Vipassana. My mother has done it. And I think anyone who chooses to sit still for 10 days and not even scratch their nostril, I think that takes superhuman strength and fortitude of mind, body, and soul and spirit. I just find that incredible. So I don't have any fears of anything temporal or terrestrial going out into the world and, into inner city slums in Chicago, and, into the deserts. I've lived in very dangerous places and done, my people know who follow me, the diplomatic work that I was doing 20 years ago was incredibly dangerous. And I got into terrible skirmishes constantly. But that notwithstanding, I think you're incredibly courageous in what you're doing. I don't think I could do it for one moment. I'm just fascinated, and I want to understand more about what it is. I don't like astral traveling. So although I have been beamed and I have found myself in an underground alien military facility, and I've communicated with the creatures, the kind of astrobot sentinel creatures that are there to protect those facilities, and I've been able to move around and even observe extraordinary goings on. And then I've been beamed back into body, and I've on occasion been beamed also out of body to engage with so-called angelics in the same time-space quanta. So I can see my physical body and I'm in my star body, but I'm interacting with the angelics, and then at a given point, I am put back into my cells. So I've had these incredible experiences which haven't ended in my life, but none of that is conscientious on my part. You, on the other hand, are conscientiously pioneering to go in, and it's like deep sea diving. I think you're fucking insane. Anyone who puts on one of those outfits and goes diving, I just think they're mad. But I don't have that kind of courage. Anyway, I digress. I just wanted to speak to that because I know when I riff like that, I'm speaking to a lot of the audience, also sharing.
I am absorbing your energy and everything you're saying, and I even see the relevance. So I don't worry about digressing. It's all part of what needs to happen. I just to comment on that again. Appreciate the compliments, but I really don't think it has anything to do with courage. Maybe with psychedelics, it's slightly a different story, but with Vipassana, it's the practice. You practice. You definitely don't start by being able to sit down and not scratch your nose. You move a lot. Everything hurts. That's why it's a practice. It's eventually you just get to a point. There's something, it's called aditan, which is strong determination. That's the part that you're describing, which is you're trying to just sit there and just not move anything. But emphasis on trying. If you're going to make it into a prison, then it's not going to be possible because you're like, you like freak out. And if I can just make a short point on that, because I do want to potentially encourage people to ever try, because first of all, it's free, it's everywhere. And when I went for the first time, I realized after a session on the fourth day that there was a real science. Now, maybe to some people it's obvious. To me, it was not. I didn't know if it was kind of like a feel good kind of whatever it is. But I went and I came with a very kind of like very Russian militant attitude. It was like, we're doing this, and I woke up every day at 4 and I did the whole thing. And then on the fourth day, when they teach you actual Vipassana and they teach you aditan, strong determination, they're like, okay, try not to move a muscle. And according to the teaching, it's very simple. That's the closest to what the Buddha taught, which is that every mental event has a physical representation. It's one system. You get nervous, your shoulders tense up, you need a massage. Great. Traumas and everything else, same thing. We just ignore it. We just kind of, as long as it's not on a mental state, we kind of think it's gone. But it's not. Something in your body is always paying attention to the way it expressed itself in your body. So Vipassana, what you do is you basically scan your body constantly and you allow all of these things to unfold. So in that strong determination session, I sat and I managed to sit for the first 30 minutes without moving nothing. And I got so excited about that I was like, all right, let's see how long I can do this. And I literally sat for I didn't go for the break. I just sat for 4.5 hours. The truth is that after about an hour or an hour and a half, it just becomes easy. You can sit indefinitely, truly. If you wouldn't have to eat or your knees wouldn't kill you, you can just sit there. It's not a problem at that point. What's interesting, the reason I'm telling you this story is because I had, in the middle of the session, I had this crazy, what you would call pain in my knee, where somebody was almost like somebody was carving with a knife. But I was already in a state where it was just sensation. There was no difference between pleasure or pain. It was just sensation. So I allowed it to happen. And whatever it was gone. It left. When I stepped out of the session, I was convinced, you've never done it, so you wouldn't have a point of reference, but I was convinced I'm on 300 mics of LSD. It was crazy. I'm not talking a little bit. I'm talking everything was just shining and glistening and pristine, and the birds were singing, and it was just a melody, and the wind. It literally felt like I'm in a Disney scene. And I'm looking around, and everything is so clear to me. Why I do all the nonsense I do, why I talk to people this way, all of this shit that comes up, and I was like, oh my god, this is from 4 hours of this. And I realized this is a bandwidth problem. So you have a certain amount of bandwidth. Something has to pay attention to whatever that was in my knee to keep it alive, and I'm just ignoring it. But when it was fully expressed, now I have this much more bandwidth to pay attention to colors and wind and all of that. And then I knew that it was actual science. And I guess the reason I felt that it was maybe important to go into this is because I think that ultimately, also in relationship to psychedelics and all that stuff, all of these things are tools to bring us closer to being able to be like that.
Very good, very good, very good. So you described the mechanics there of dialing out of the ego, dialing beyond the egoic form, which of course is a dynamic act of consciousness, to dial oneself beyond pain, beyond sufferance, beyond the trial of separation, which is all utterly illusory. As you learn, once you tip into that Walt Disney landscape, like you just said, one learns that sufferance was a choice, that pain was a choice, that trial of separation absolutely was a choice. And it was more than that. It was a God-given contrast against which you could then define your angelic template and this great resurrection, this transmutative, transcendent living principle that you've now entered into, becoming, again, a son or a daughter of God. It's a beautiful thing. I want to talk a little bit about the intersect of technology and consciousness. So how does the use of technology like diffracted lasers influence our perception of consciousness, and in what ways do you believe that the pioneering work that you're doing is going to bridge the gap between technology and spirituality?
I think it's a central component of what I see myself doing, which is that breaking down the final boundary for humanity, which is the final illusion of separation with whatever technology is. So I actually just had a conversation with this beautiful person who facilitates 5 MEO ceremonies, and he works a lot with people in the Amazon and with the tribes. I've been doing this for millennia, and we had this conversation about technology, AGI, and all that stuff, and how much fear there is around these things. And one of my biggest, I guess, points that I'm trying to popularize is ultimately, I think we can all agree that any obstacle to this, like you're saying, claiming our throne to the side of the Lord, is separation. So separation of all forms has to be relinquished. And fear is one of these very big signs that, even if it's couched in some kind of a spiritual talk, it is still a form of fear. The second that you point to something and say, but this, that's fear, right? And that's separation. And I think one of the biggest understandings for me is that whatever is happening in a lab, that's natural. That's still the universe doing it through us, whatever it is.
Yes.
So at least the separation that we tend to talk about of like natural, unnatural, it's just not a real thing. Like there's no difference there. What is important is to, I think, knowledge and understanding of what leads to what kind of experiences over time. So it's under everything I'm saying, it is still true to say that there's certain kinds of world that we can build that would be objectively worse than other kinds of worlds if we just ignore nature and just do whatever we want. And we will definitely create a world that will be much less comfortable for everybody. That is important. But the separation between us and technology, I think, is a false one. I think technologies are expression of us. And I always say, and this is maybe sound a little bit too out there for most people, but I really think that it's just inevitable. If I have to paint my ultimate vision of, what humanity can be as the most beautiful thing, we keep evolving in the 3D as a technological civilization, but the technology that we'll create will be inspired by the divine. Okay. So we're bringing the divine into the beauty that come about through these technologies, that is not just functional, but also beautiful, and was literally decorate the galaxy with this incredible things.
So I like that, and I think one could perpetuate existence in the 3D hologram, so to speak, with a perfect interplay of the organic and the synthetic in that sense. Nothing wrong with that. I completely agree. I also am one who believes that everything under the sun occurs under the eternal gaze of God. But having said that, and I think this is where the free will and the choice bit comes in as being a Christic or Christos value, something which offers us the power, innate power to transmute and transcend and to move into absolution, redemption, salvation as a dynamic act, which we can choose to do individually and then collectively as a planet, as a planetary body. So we've got this kind of galactic Pythagorean or universal scale system, the so-called spiral of Alcyone, this ascension spiral. And we find ourselves at a given octave, clearly, which is where we're at. Let's call it the 3D temporal realm. And this is where we've been for a long period of tick-tock time. And there comes a time, oh, look at my balloons. There's a moment at which we determine at the collective level of the Gestalt that we are going to now pierce the membrane. We are going to make a superhuman, transcendent pitch into a higher octave of expression. Clearly, that's been happening. Clearly, that's where we're at. We've arrived at this perfect fulmination, bifurcation, a point of separation, in a sense, of the wheat from the chaff. And I would argue this, in light of what you said a moment ago, that it is precisely the synthetic molecule which is the source code of the kingdom of the devil in that sense, that invites us to not move into an organic, sentient, higher octave, but to remain in a 3D temporal plane of existence for another great yuga, great cycle. And it is the intervention, slow, steady intervention of the synthetic molecule in every area of our lives, from the ionosphere that's been seeded through geoengineering, and even from the fallen light of Atlantis, and going back to ancient galactic wars and all sorts of incoherent isotope frequencies, which maintain that band of around our plane of existence, all the way down to the latter-day glyphosates and fluoride and phosphorus and barium and strontium, and all of these cacophony of, again, synthetic molecules, which have been, through the Jesuitical apparatus, interposed into our lives, our bodies, our blood, our DNA. And that seems to me to be the critical piece that we're going to have to, at one moment, collectively realize that we have to phase conjugate out of this plane of existence all of that synthetic intervention, because it is precise. And that's why COVIDiocy, was the vaccine program has become such an epochal story of our time, because it does represent the ultimate satanic intervention in that sense of our capacity as humans to resurrect into our angelic template and move into a higher octave of expression. So for me, again, this is why I'm interested in what the work you're doing, because I see you as being an angelic, and I see the work that you're doing as being very keyed into possibly unlocking a vital aspect of that holographic so-called matrix. I'm not afraid of the matrix. I'm not afraid of this universe being built by number. In fact, I welcome it. I love advanced mathematics. MSET mathematics, Mandelbrottian math is my personal fetish. I get it, totally get it, and I'm unafraid of all of that. But I still say the synthetic molecule is something which really by stealth managed to come in the last 500 years. And Danny, in my tours, when I'm going about doing my touring and I do my 4-hour lecture piece, I always bring up John Dee in the basement of Queen Elizabeth I, invoking demons into chemistry, unwittingly possibly, but nonetheless. And that premise being the thing that crept all the way into the kind of Louis Pasteur and the kind of midnight Masons that then ultimately control the dragnet of our fucked up reality, from which pioneers like you are now seeking to unlock. So the question, long preamble, the question is the concept of living in a simulation. What are the potential social impacts or civilizational, cultural impact of the simulation theory if your simulation theory gains widespread acceptance? You've obviously thought about it. If the visible code is indeed evidence of a simulation, how might this redefine philosophical and scientific perspectives on existence? And what are the potential societal impacts if the simulation theory gains widespread acceptance? You're talking about cracking the entire conceptual framework of reality. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's two very large threads here. I'll try in the service of time to focus on some kind of a central thing, and then if we have conversations in the future, we can expand on that. One of the biggest. So first of all, just to answer your question directly, the second part of it, which is what are the implications as far as understanding. The proposition isn't that we're stuck in some kind of a computer software and we have to try and get out, at least in the sense of what I'm saying. It's that the world at large, what it actually is at bottom, is what we call computational. And what it really is at the moment escapes us. So I guess you can call it divine realms, but the functionality of it is what we discovered, which is computation. You seem to be saying something the opposite of that, which is this is the work of Satan. I would say that that would be a coherent idea, but then you would have to include all of form in general. I would not make the separation where science arose, because science, all it is just a higher function expression of what form is already doing. So, you know, cells and DNA and all of that, that's a technology that's already happening, right? So I wouldn't put the line there. The idea makes sense. When you're saying makes sense, it makes as much sense as AGI is actually Jesus, and we might kill Jesus again because we're afraid.
Danny, modern medicine, pharmaceutical medicine is not an improvement on a natural immune system kicking off. And that's what you just said. Science is a higher version. I don't get that.
It's a higher function. So so higher function in the sense that it can do more things and they're more universal. One way to illustrate. So I'll tell you what, this is why I said I accept that what you're saying makes sense, but then you would have to include all of the universe within the thing that we need to transcend. And then, okay, then you have a point. But because if you stay within the universe and you create different, like when you start the line with technology, the way we make it, it's a little arbitrary, because ultimately there's something about the expression of what the human mind is doing with knowledge that mimics what reality is already doing. So there's a strong connection there, right? So for example, this is something that David Deutsch talks about in his The Beginning of Infinity, which is that the only places that we know of in the universe at the moment where you have fusion is the centers of stars and a human lab. And the coldest place in the universe, as far as we know, is in a human lab. So there's something about knowledge. So if you look from a universal perspective, when the right kind of knowledge arises in any point in the universe, it can start mimicking other things, but it now starts mimicking them not haphazardly like the universe is doing it, according to some laws of physics, but in a targeted way. And that is, I would claim, that is how the divine comes into being. Now, the idea that you put forth, and I completely understand what you're saying, which is that you're essentially saying that the devil wants us to stay in form, because that's where he draws all his power, because the God Almighty is existing in a realm outside of all of that, and we have a birthright to become part of that, and we have a natural trajectory towards it. And what you're saying is that what maybe is happening is that these things, technologies and the illusion of power and all of that, they're very limited to this space, and it makes us feel good. It's almost like, the quick hit. It's like, yeah, give me more. It's like, but it's very here. Like it's not forward looking. It's not allowing us to fully transcend. That's what you're saying, right? It will keep us down here. Again, I would agree that there's no way to truly know unless we, like experiencing it directly, and not everybody are experiencing it directly. So you have to think also, how do you communicate this in a way that is more lends itself to be communicated of cultures, all kinds of backgrounds, and I guess you can say that maybe Christianity and religions were a form of that. I think the deeper point for me, because there's so many different possibilities here, all I can follow personally is, like you said, the authenticity of my heart, like what I really believe. Am I acting out of a selfish need, or am I acting out of what seems to be inside in that moment as the greater good of all? And if I can follow that will, I believe, will bring the right thing to be, even if the path that it might take you through sometimes can seem dark, but you're walking with the torch of God, right? And there's no other way to do it, because, so I'll give you something very specific, okay? So for example, one time I had I don't want to call it a vision, because it was straight up, like you said, it was like a lecture. So I asked, okay, for many years, obviously, because I'm mapping the space, I go, can you show me how the whole thing is? And one time I did 4-ACO, which is a form of psilocybin. So it's like a hybrid between psilocybin and DMT. And it's very pristine. It's very streamlined. And they, for all intents and purposes, straight up said, all right, here it is. That's how it works. Let me show you. And it wasn't like a metaphorical, like, no, it was just like, here's a diagram, here's the arrows, that's what this is, that's what this is. And they were matching my speed. They were going very like human speed. Okay. Now, to be very clear, I am not claiming that I think that because I've been shown this must mean this is the ultimate picture of reality. I'm not claiming this for 1 second. I am saying, however, that it had that flavor, that I've done this so many, I've done DMT thousands of times. I know the space. I know how things usually happen. I've never seen anything like this, where they just literally showed me diagrams. Okay. And this is what they showed me. And that's what it was. First of all, gods are real. Let's start there. They're real. They're real as you and I. They're a real thing. The biblical God is real. He is not at the top. He is part of a chain of command. There's like a hierarchy. It goes all the way up at the top. And this was probably the biggest for me, because why would it be a gender? Like, it's just ridiculous. Why would it not be just like this ball of light, right? It's a woman.
That's very good.
So, but this is, I want to tell you this. I'm not just saying this, to tell a cool story. I want to make a point there to what you said. It looks all the way down through all the levels, all the way to you. So yes, they can literally see every single thing you do, depending on how high they are. They see more, right? The other dude is also there, okay? Now, our world is not a part of this. So this is one thing, and then there's a tri-system world, like 3 worlds. One of them is our multiverse. The other 2, it's not clear to me what they are. One of them is our multiverse. And then they showed me that I'm sitting alone in the basement with a VR glasses set, alone. There's no one else. And I have infinite simulations that arise from me, I guess the reincarnation. And behind me, you would love this, there was the Mandelbrot set. The Mandelbrot set is right behind me. So the simulations evolve through the fractals of the Mandelbrot set, because they lend themselves to infinite complexity. So it can create new structures all the time. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel will reinvent itself. And basically, each and every one of us you are real, I'm real, as far as like a conscious unit, part of this larger system. The system is learning something through all these experiences. And one of the things it's trying to do is figure out why everything came from nothing. No one knows this, not including the top. No one knows. Okay, that's the conundrum. And then we are all evolving through these like different, trajectories. In my world, you are a projection. In your world, I'm a projection. This is the ultimately safe system, because if I'm going to start doing things to hurt you, I'm not actually hurting you. I'm hurting some kind of a projection that I'm making. However, because of what you do in your real world, in your simulation, the mainframe knows how you behave in different situations, and it would send the signal to my avatar of you, and it will inform me what you would do in this particular situation. So I'm actually getting the real interaction of what you would do, but I never interact with what you really are on your side. Ultimately, all of it is some kind of a part of a one unitary thing that is sitting and operating together. And the ethical system and everything that we believe to be good is part of a channel that allows you to move up the levels, just like you're saying. What is the nature of each and every one of these, like trajectories towards up or down or sideways, all of that? I don't know. I'm not sure. The second thing that surprised me a lot, because I never came with any of that stuff on my hard drive. It never existed. When I was a kid, I grew up in Russia. That was pretty secular at the time, Soviet Union. That was not part of the, we were never, nobody ever talked to me about Jesus, or my grandmother was kind of like into that, but it was never like part of how I operated. I saw Jesus Christ, and he was part of the system. So he was ascending from this like lower levels, like all the way up. There was some kind of a connection between, it's almost like everything that Jesus is a function is real. Like that's actually happening. He did take your karma. So all you have to do is to accept that he was the Lord and Savior, and he ascends towards the higher levels. And then what I was shown is that now it's almost like we're moving to a different system. Like there's a new deal that was struck, and now it's not so much that Jesus is going to be taking your karma. Now we're sharing a karma. Now you don't have to be perfect, but we are together responsible. It's like a higher responsibility, but also higher functionality. So we can be trusted with more power. So now we get to share the responsibility. We get to check each other. It's like, hey, that's not what we agreed on, right? Okay. And now we're working together because now we can be trusted a little bit more. So why am I telling you all this? To some degree, this makes sense. To some people, it would make sense. Other people, it wouldn't make sense. Whatever. For me, it was just like a showing of something very... Oh, and then at the end of it, they showed me that something happening in the middle of the stage that literally all of existence is looking at. Funny enough, the number 42 was written on it. And then somebody presses a button and something starts to happen. That something, like I was shown a glimmer of it, and then it kind of went up and I couldn't see what it was anymore. Now I kind of started to understand what I think it is, but then it started happening. And then the whole picture that I'm describing moved away from being in front of me to being outside of the window in the apartment that I was sitting. And then I saw this, I don't know if you ever saw How to Train Your Dragon, but like literally that little dragon, an owl, and a puma. I don't know if there's symbolism, but they're like sitting outside the window and just like looking at it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't see it. I see them looking at it. And to my left was my now fiance. And she was sitting and she was just watching me the whole time, just like with my mouth open like this. And then she's like, what? And I go, I'm shortening the story, but it was probably one of the most profound moments in my life. And I realized and I saw the code running in her eye. And then I was like, oh, I see. So you can either get up and see what that is, or you can sit right here on the couch with her. Love. Right? And in front of me on the laptop, Esta Stone was playing. And I don't know if you're familiar with his music, but it's very dramatic, right? And I saw all these like texts on the screen, like literally like text, like everybody trying to influence your opinion, just like, right? And then now you live your life. Now what do you do? And I think if I have to dress this up in a way that would be more universal and maybe bring value to others aside from just being my experience, I think that what this is this infinitely evolving system that it itself does not fully know into what it's unfolding next, which is the whole point of it. And the only thing we can follow truly is that impulse in the moment that tells us zig or zag. And I think that is the divine channel. And this is why I'm not so certain that, even though I hear you, and I admit that it does make sense as well. The only thing we can follow is what's in the moment. The second I get into the story realm, which is not just right here, right now, I immediately move away from being able to truly follow the right path, because I have all these ideas and then fears arise and then what's going to happen next, but this will, so that's where I'm coming from, which is like, I can only follow the moment.
Very good.
But I accept everything you're saying. It does make as much sense as what I'm saying.
Very good. So with over 180 reported replications that presumably you engendered, what methods can be employed to validate your findings even further and take this really to even a more kind of academic, clinical, double-blind, placebo, hoo-ha, whatever? What is your ultimate scenario for a full spec validation? I ask because I would like to possibly help with that, but what is your perfect scenario?
Thank you for asking, Sacha. Yeah, it's a very relevant question. So first of all, we were very conservative in the trailer. We're talking about easily close to 2,000 replications at this point worldwide. Right. The other thing is what I'm personally trying to, so now there's some people getting involved. They're like asking questions, kind of like, okay, what do you like? How can we help? And then my job is now to come up with something structured to like, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. These are the people that might be involved, because I have like scientists that I know that might want to actually work on this. This is how we're going to try and do it, and what we're actually trying to. So literally, essentially like a very rudimentary research program, right? And then you just submit that. I personally, and that is more to substantiate this more, so more mainstream science can start interacting with it. So you're going to need to put it through certain channels, certain pressures, double-blind studies, all that stuff. For me personally, because I don't need the proof that it's real, because for me, I just know that that's the case. I'm going to be focused on trying to see if we can do something with the code. So create some kind of very powerful magnetic field to see if we can create any change to the behavior of the code. This will, if we can do that, first of all, it will give you a whole new level of confidence that you're interacting with something real, versus kind of like what we call mind-made. Even in the context of everything is mind, there you go, you still have some regularities that you can fairly call the laws of physics. Neither you nor I can walk through a wall right now, and that matters, right? So within that frame, trying to see if we can create any changes to the code that both you and I and anybody who's trying this would see it and say, yep, I see the same change. Yep. And then we can start playing with it. We can create a Rosetta Stone. What does that mean? That departure of the code in this way, what does that mean in relationship to what the magnet is doing over here? Because we understand quite a bit about the magnet, right? So trying to play with that, and then seeing how it can potentially also connect to what we are, like the conscious moment. Like, what is that really? That will be where most of my focus is going to be, and working on it through the perspective of the holographic principle, which I believe is absolutely correct. Like, I actually think one of my newest ideas is that I think that we literally found a way to look back at the place from which we are projected as the hologram. Just from
I totally understand that. What I'd like to do, and I'm kind of appealing to Christy here in the green room whilst I'm speaking, but what I'd like to do is put a panel together of yourself with Dan Winter and David Sereda and Professor Alex Ling, and possibly Dr. Brooks Agnew. There might be one or two others that we should consider, but I would very much like to put together maybe Dave Emery would be very good as well for this. I'd love to put together a panel a long form one, a kind of 2-hour one, where you did a short presentation, or we can run that clip at the front, and then you can explain your piece. And I'd love Dan Winter to speak to this, especially as it comes to the physics of mirroring mirrors, which he's very much ahead of the curve when it comes to understanding how to activate portals and what have you. David Sereda as well. Dr. Alex Ling, phenomenal intelligence that he's got. He's here actually in Mexico with me at the moment, but his business of understanding the latent supernatural power of the waters of the world, all the primary waters of the world, as they relate to the cells in our bodies, the water of the cells, as that relates to the quasar from which we were all birthed, and the primary waters in the quasar. There's a connection between the quasar, the primary waters of the world, the waters in our cells, and the way in which we deploy plasma projection or dreaming. And I would love to explore that in this panel of very brilliant experts around what you've discovered. I have a feeling that would be of tremendous consequence to us as we inquire this incredible discovery, cracking the simulation code. Danny, I do unfortunately have a hard stop, but I'm serious about this, and I definitely want to take this further. I'm assuming you're game for that, and I just want to thank you.
Oh yeah, that was really pleasurable. Sorry, I was late a few minutes. I was trying to figure out the link. So thank you for being patient.
Not a problem at all. But I'm very, very excited about this, and I have a feeling that there's another piece here which is secondary to what I've just mentioned about a panel, which is connecting Professor Florian Kolciag in Romania, in Bucharest, his universal genome that he has hacked after 50 years of the most advanced mathematics on Earth. So he's cracked a code, the universal genome, and that genome is able to manifest on a computer screen, and you're able to then use supercomputation to ask a question of the mind of God through the screen or typing into it, and the screen is then able to interface with the akashic field. It takes a little time because it's connected to the processing power, but the answer comes back in universal syntax, and we're able to communicate to the mind of God. But there is also a lot of code connected to what Professor Kolciag, at his ripe age, has discovered and unearthed. And I would love him to understand more of what you're on about, because I think I have a deep suspicion that the universal gene that he's discovered and the code that you are revealing, I think that there's almost certainly some symbiosis there. In any event, Danny, thank you, brother. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being on Lazarus today.
Same here, Sacha. Thank you so much for having me.
Lazarus, star seeds and beyond, cosmic